Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to the August 8th, 2024 school committee workshop. I'll start by moving the consent agenda. Does anybody have questions about any of those items? Let's move to a vote. Suzanne?
Do we move it?
I moved it, yeah.
Do we second?
Do we normally have to second the consent again?
I think we did. We have,
Okay,
yeah.
well,
I'll
would you like to second? All right, and ready to vote?
Yeah.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen? Yes. Carolyn?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Helen?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, so our first substantial item is a discussion and possible vote on the 2024 superintendent evaluation. That will be followed by a preview of next year's evaluation process, which will start quite soon, actually. So first of all, many thanks to Dr. Guillory for providing us with a long memo to support the evaluation. Thanks to Suzanne for kind of leading us through this process and making sure everybody understood what we were supposed to be doing. And also to Betsy for keeping us on track and pulling everything together. So you have all gotten by emails everybody's individual evaluations in a paper in front of you. We have sort of the tally.
Did we get enrolled individually?
Yeah.
When did we get?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was all one long.
scroll.
Yeah, it was all in one big.
Oh, I missed it, okay. Oh, well.
So there's also electronically and on paper the tally, and electronically on paper my draft of sort of an aggregate evaluation. Where they did provide space for comments, I tried to just do a very concise thing that I thought kind of sat at the center of gravity of the comments that people had written. And for the scores, Betsy had tallied everything, and I was trying to just take the median score in every case. And I realized, looking at it just now, that in one instance I was inconsistent, and so I would like to propose fixing that. So
Andy, do you mind going slower?
yeah,
Okay.
So which part should I be?
All of it, if you don't mind, sorry.
Sure.
I got stuck
So-
at the beginning and I.
So yeah, 7 of the members, the 2 who were not just selected, sort of provided individual evaluations. Those are all in electronic form. They were sent to the school committee and we posted on after this meeting publicly. So Betsy pulled together sort of all the scores in this grid that was given to you electronically and is also in front of you. What we then did was just to take the median of the scores, and that was what's listed here in the aggregate evaluation. And in addition to those median scores, I also tried to summarize very briefly the comments that people had written, not necessarily the whole range of comments, but what I thought was the center of gravity of the comment for each section. And I made one mistake at least, which was if you look on step 1, the student learning goal says significant progress. And then if you look on page 3, under student learning goal, I checked some progress. Really, if you look at the raw tally for those 2, strictly speaking, the median of each of those is some progress. But it seems to make sense given the spread to have that be significant progress. So I meant to do significant progress on page 3. So if folks are okay with that, we can
Page
change
3.
some progress to significant progress
Student learning goal.
on the student learning goal.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, got it.
I mean, it's somehow like the
Because I was looking at the first page and you have significant progress.
yeah,
on
but
page one.
you see that there's an inconsistency because under student learning goal on page 3, I checked some progress when I really should.
I blame the
have
form and
progress.
not you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's very generous. So anyway, I proposed that we put that the significant progress just to be consistent with what we did on page 1.
Can I ask a question
Yeah,
about that?
So with that, I mean, just let's open the floor to any comments or questions. We have 50 minutes to discuss this.
So for the district improvement goals that were 2, and one on page 3 is significant progress and one is met, but you elected to lean up to do significant progress on the front page.
Yeah, well, that wasn't my choice. That was each individual member had to make that decision as well, right? Because of how to combine the 2 district improvement goals into a single score on page 1 for district improvement goals. So
Where is that on the cheat sheet? Oh, I see it.
right? So each individual member already did that for themselves, and so I just mindlessly put the median.
But then what is the median of these two? Like if I'm looking at whatever it is, rows 10. The
I didn't think-
median of
Oh, I see.
one is significant progress and the median of the other one is met. So how are you taking, why did you decide significant
Oh.
progress?
Because if you look on step one on the tally sheet under district improvement, people already decided for themselves whether they were gonna say for that whole overall category significant progress met or exceeded. And I think the median of those are just.
Ah, got it, okay.
Oh,
Let's see.
I understood before this exchange, now I don't.
Yeah,
Can you say that again? So I'm looking at student learning. There are 4 saying some progress, 3 saying that. I assumed you were averaging, not taking the median.
yeah, so like I said before, for that one, like strictly speaking, the median is some progress.
Right.
But given that they were, it
Bimodal.
It
was like these two
average.
humps, so for that one and that one only, I
It took
decided
an
to take the average.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, so, do folks have comments either on the way that the marks were tallied or on the sort of summary comments that are in the aggregate version?
Can we take a minute? Sorry.
Sure.
Okay.
Question while we're reading this, I guess, or other before reading it, is that under section 4 that we're to discuss it like an hour and a half or something like that, is that what the process of doing these evaluations for Carolyn and I, who are new, is going to be discussed or presented, so we have an idea of the context and structure and protocol and steps that are taken to get to this?
Actually, so that
We would benefit if you're doing that.
as soon as we're done with approving this, if we do approve it, then we'll have a discussion of how next year's process will run.
Oh, it might be different.
We're at least at the outset, I would propose to change something right at the beginning, and we can kind of talk about that.
Jesse, one thing to think about is, until we know otherwise, this will be the form next year as well. So
Yeah.
as we go through this, it should kind of instruct you a little bit about what you have to do a year from now.
Okay.
Okay, so you can ask your questions as it goes, so.
Andy, your proposed methodology makes sense to me to find consensus by looking for the median, and when that median is absent to take the average. So I think that methodology should be the way we proceed. The only question I have is that there were a few categories where I thought I would have preferred to write not applicable, because I had trouble understanding whether evidence was presented at all towards that goal. And I didn't know what to do on that one, and I still am not totally clear on how the committee should consider that. So that's the only, I'm raising that as a methodological question first, rather than as a specific, although I'm happy to talk specifics too.
Yeah, I mean, Mariah, I think actually did there was one category where you just did give a rating because.
Because the evidence didn't support the thing, the goal.
And to be clear, what you mean is the evidence is supplied to us, because you do know more just by interactions and everything that happened over the course of the year. But what you mean is the evidence that was given to us by Dr. Guillory.
In general, I will say that the evidence we were given did not necessarily always, I knew more than what we were given. So I think that's an opportunity for better tighter alignment between evidence and goals. There was one, I believe, and I can't remember now which one it was or anything about it because my brain is not
It was
there.
a focus indicator 1B evaluation.
Yeah, but that was it. That one said that everyone was being evaluated, and we were only told about senior leadership and principals, I believe, getting evaluations. So I didn't feel like I could rate it because and I had no idea. I know it's something we've talked about in the past,
Right.
but I don't know to that level. Was everyone being evaluated as they're supposed to?
I would love for this evaluation. I've been evaluated by this evaluation for many years. And I would love when there's some so-called absence of information, for us to be able to use what we know generally. It sort of feels like a,
Oh, I agree. I did do that. I'm just saying for that one, I just have no idea. And I was a bad school committee member and waited until a week after the due date. So I didn't feel like I was had any like ability to go back and ask because I had screwed up. So if I had been on time, I might have asked for clarifications. Since I didn't, I just moved on.
So I think in the future, we probably could say, no, Dr. Gilroy, that if you don't feel that there's enough evidence to make a judgment, to ask for that.
Absolutely. It was on me. I did everything wrong. And so I didn't want to stress anyone out by asking for very late information.
This is the most bad of it.
It is.
It's hard to, it's hard.
No, go ahead.
No, that was my statement.
Is the school committee bound to use? This is a statutory requirement.
That's my understanding. I think it is a statutory requirement.
Well, in Glenn Kuchar's memo that is also in front of you, he does mention that.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the sentence we talked about there. Yeah, we have learned that in some cases, school committees and superintendents have cut back or added new elements to the evaluation. So I don't think there's a law that requires us to do this and this only.
Oh, I thought there was a law that required, not us to do this only, but I thought this was
we
the
were
minimum.
required to do
Yeah.
this.
So I don't know about the cutting back, then what Glenn is talking about.
No,
Teachers and, yeah.
When I read that memo, which I highlighted some bits of it, I felt like the memo, it was like the memo was talking about a different process. And although I didn't participate in the process, I did try to read through.
The memo is talking about one piece of this process, which is just that goal setting part, which and not at all about the what do they call it? The standards.
matrix.
Right, so. Yeah.
Okay.
So I want
Sorry. So the answer is yes. We are statutorily bound to do this, although it sounds like we're not limited to only this.
I don't
That's
know,
my
do
understanding.
you think there's a statute that requires us to at least do all of this?
yes, you don't have to do it every year. You could do it like every other year, but you do have to do it every year for like the first 3 years or something.
sorry, what statute are you referring to?
Let's Google it.
So maybe that's worth looking into if it sounds like there's general consensus that this process is at least a little bit cumbersome and maybe doesn't sort of give the kinds of opportunities that people want.
My understanding is that this is the MASC's best effort to create a process by which the school committees can fulfill their statutory duty to evaluate superintendents.
Well, this comes
But
from
the
DESI.
process-
It actually comes from DESI.
This form is from DESI.
Yeah, it's not from MASC.
So it was done maybe when Bill Lupini was here and Rebecca Stone, and they were on the committee that put this thing together.
The state.
So we can talk to Rebecca and see why they made such a god awful one.
When you say
I
that,
guess
this is the way you've been evaluated.
Well, I mean,
for
they did
years,
with the committee.
Which aspects of it are exactly the same.
what I was referring specifically to was when you supply some evidence. So you set your own goals, you supply some evidence, and then your evaluator looks at that evidence and evaluates you. I've received such grace over the years in terms of somebody knowing me and my practice by walking into the classroom. So I would love to just ask all of us that, if you want more evaluation of the superintendent, to make an appointment to see them and, and express yourself. And that if you don't feel like you got everything that you need and you're filling this out, that you could look, at all the other information you've gotten from our every other week meetings. I just think it's sort of like the spirit with which this type of evaluation is usually done. So I just wanted to inform people that that had been my experience.
You're right.
I mean, as cumbersome as it is an evaluation form and it guides us, and the standards are right on, right? Instructional leadership, management operations. I mean, it covers almost every area.
That's not the part. It's like sort of how they're asking the same question in multiple spots, and like you have in most things these days, they automatically average and pull data, but this is a manual form, and
So
yeah.
the form itself may not be great, but the idea that there's an evaluation and that's something that we attend to every year, every other year, and standards that the state has defined is important for administration. Teachers have slightly different standards, so the form is slightly different for teaching. But it does really give some focus. What happened before all of this is that no one was getting evaluated. Superintendents were, administrators were, teachers were not, principals were not. I mean, it was just appalling in some places, in down Brookline, but.
I
And so,
think what we did with Jim Walsh, I can't remember that actually.
yeah, I mean, the state stepped in and said, wait a minute, guys, you have to do this, both this all staff.
And the part that was helpful being somebody who's new to this was that it helps me fill out the role. Because there's some parts of the job that I know about and some that I didn't feel like I knew about. And so the form helps me sort of understand the parts that I wouldn't have thought of myself.
To that point, I'll just say that I am looking up the Mass General Law or whatever it is, and the standards are embodied in the law.
Yeah.
So the professional,
Form, no?
I don't know what this is, yeah, it is actually, it's adopted from 1995, so I presume it's part of the whole
Every
package.
form, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, the goals also, like the form itself is not required, but everything that the form requires is required.
Is the structuring of the standards into focus indicators, that part is not required?
No, they have focus indicators
that's
as well.
what
It's
it's-
literally down to that level, yes, in the law.
So has everybody by now had a chance to actually look through the aggregate and decide whether there are any comments or revisions, you know what I mean?
I mean, I didn't get all the inputs obviously, so. There are two places where it mentions, community and family responses as not being, well, it says, either said it's not where it needs to be, or it says needs improvement. Is there a place moving forward where we'd be able to look at this information and find out why this was written? That it needs improvement and reflected a concern to two places. One is this family and community engagement, and again, as mentioned, I think at the top.
And that was just what I pulled from the 7 individual evaluations that came in, that people wrote,
More details there.
wrote remarks, yeah.
Because I'm saying that would be a way of, that would, could be utilized as a way of comparing this coming year to now. Otherwise, how do you, where, what, make progress or not?
To your point, Betsy, this is a really nice way to get a bird's eye view. I really like that. Betsy, thank you for putting together this grid. It's very helpful to
Yes.
see what's going on overall.
I just like to, thank you to Andy for putting this together. It's not easy. To have 7 evaluations.
It's really hard,
It's
and I
really hard.
truly appreciate it too.
So thank you very much for that. I just want to comment, just to raise up some of the comments on the overall step 4. We did get the strategic plan this year, which was our big goal. And it happened, and they're working on it, so that's really going to lead us as we go forward. Budgeting process, thank you to Mariah and her subcommittee. I think you made huge gains in that area in finance.
That's what Susan thinks to Susan and her
yeah.
team, yes, for
Absolutely,
sure.
Absolutely. And, yeah, I just wanted to, and I, also teaching and learning, I think is doing a lot of good hard work. And again, it's gonna come to fruition as we go forward.
I move we vote to approve this without the language.
With the one change that
I'm gonna,
I asked for, where I, what is it?
Subject to Andy's change that he asked for.
Yep.
On page 3,
I'd like to raise one thing before we do that. I thought there was a misunderstanding of one indicator, but I could be wrong. I just want to ask to discuss it. It was the environment indicator, standard 2A.
Oh, yeah, I saw your comment.
Yeah.
It did say
So
the impact.
that,
Mental health.
so it seemed to me from reading the rubric that this standard was about the physical operation of the building primarily and only secondarily at best about SEL.
Well, why do you
So
say that?
I say that because if you look at the superintendent rubric that Dr. Guillory submitted to us as supporting material, the baseline is to establish plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems that address the safety, health, and emotional and social needs of students throughout the district, such that schools and other buildings are generally clean, attractive, welcoming, or safe. And if you go throughout the 4 categories, there's a real strong emphasis on the safety, cleanliness, and healthfulness of the buildings themselves, not of the content or the curriculum. And that's what seems to be meant by environment. There, the 3rd bullet under proficiency and the 3rd bullet under exemplary suggest learning environment in a broader way, but never referring to curriculum, which is how we've been presented with SEL. So the evidence presented to us around 2A is entirely around curriculum. So it seemed to be to me to be a misunderstanding of this indicator. But I could be wrong. That was my reading of 2A from the rubric and also from the example evidence document submitted as well.
I interpreted it both that way and the other way, that both things counted, sort of the big tent approach to the meaning of the word safe and healthy.
But even if you take the big tent approach, the evidence submitted was strictly around one aspect of it, which
Yeah.
at best seems to be not the emphasis of what this indicator is about. So I don't think this indicator was appropriately presented to us in this. So I don't know what to do with that, but I don't think the way we responded to it in your aggregate makes sense to me.
Meaning the overall rating for that focus indicator or
Right.
or the summary.
So
comment?
under rubric, it suggests what proficiency would look like. So I tried to consider whether we'd seen evidence of that.
So what did they say?
So evidence of proficiency is developed and executes effective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, and emotional and social needs of students throughout the district, as evidenced by orderly and efficient student entry, dismissal, meal class transition. It's a really weird indicator. Transition, assemblies, and recess. That's one.
And that's the
Cool.
superintendent's responsibility. It was really,
School and district buildings that are clean, attractive, welcoming, and safe. And 3, safe and supportive learning environments for all students. So we've seen stuff towards the 3rd. I've been in buildings and can think about the extent to which they're clean, attractive, welcoming, and safe. But I thought I'd raise that point here.
It makes sense.
Well, if it's a focus indicator next year, then we can all go in with a different understanding.
Well, and also like in Linus's evidence, because there's lots of work that's being done on that front, thank goodness, so that's a.
And that's
I
not,
think there's a baseline that we expect. And the social emotional stuff is sort of the added piece, is the way I looked at it.
I think I agree with that.
You know, I mean, there's baseline, kids should be able to get into school and in an orderly fashion, more or less. I don't think that they have to be, lined up and, like.
I guess I took this rubric really seriously, and the baseline here is plans. So I thought, well, I've never seen any plans, so I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know, is that evidence of unsatisfactory, or have I just not seen the plans? I don't know. But it wasn't submitted as part of the evidence, and I was looking at both the rubric and the example evidence as help for establishing my I guess I was really looking at the rubric and example evidence a lot to guide me for my rating for each indicator. And it said to me that an analysis of safety and crisis plans was a key way to determine that that's under the example evidence. that would have been a school committee method for determining their rating. So I haven't done that.
Generally, it sounds like there's an opportunity to make sure that the evidence matches the indicator.
Right, and so there was an opportunity to do that.
Here, there was a-
I will second Mariah's motion.
All right. Are there any further comments or questions before we vote?
Is that the end of the discussion after we vote?
Well, no, we'll then move on to how we do things next year.
Okay. Is it appropriate to ask questions of Dr. Guillory about some of the things his memo? They're not like.
Why don't we vote on the evaluation and have that be part of our discussion?
Yeah.
For the next year.
I think that makes
Maybe,
sense.
maybe something that you would like to see in the next year, this year's goals.
Yeah.
Although they are superintendent's goals, they're not our goals, we get to do our own goals.
Yeah, no, I just have some sort
Yeah,
of
so I
like
think,
meaning
I would
questions,
think
so.
that might make sense.
Yeah, I think to inform next year's process, that would be great. Okay, so can we vote then on this year's evaluation? All right, so Dan,
Yes,
Sarah,
Yes,
Ethan,
Abstain.
Carolyn,
Should I abstain because I didn't participate?
I think it's fine for abstaining, yeah.
Will you still,
We'll,
okay,
we'll have enough,
abstain.
yeah, right.
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Jesse, I vote yes.
Val,
Oh, that's right, Val is on. Val, would you like to vote?
she's also doing a board meeting, so she doesn't hear your mentions.
You may not be. Yeah, okay. What's that? Okay.
You know, maybe I can. Extra?
Oh, wait,
yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay, would you like to vote? Okay, Betsy, I think you need to unmute that all.
From board meeting, if she could.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have multiple Zooms and take phone calls.
Okay.
I'm a little jealous.
Yeah.
It's fine, Betsy, she votes yes.
She's back.
Alright,
Sorry about that.
alright, so we have, so I guess that's 6 yes and 3 abstain. All right, well, again, thank you to Betsy, Suzanne, and Linus for getting us through this process. So on to next year. So it's something that I think Suzanne and I and Linus had talked about as a possibility for next year. So there's been some frustration, I think, that now that we kind of understand the process and that there are these like goals that the superintendent sets and focus indicators that he chooses from among the possibilities, given the 4 standards. Like, I think in the past, it's been presented by the superintendent at a meeting in the fall. And at that point, the school committee could decline to accept those, but in fact, it's kind of too late at that point to really have substantive input on what the goals and focus indicators should be. So we were thinking that this year, a reasonable schedule might be that we could have a discussion with the school committee and Dr. Guillory at one of our September meetings, where, I think Dr. Guillory, you've come in with sort of proposals for goals and focus indicators, but then the school committee would have a chance to have some input on that. Before then, we would come back again in October. Dr. Guillory would present his goals again, and at that point, we could vote whether those are okay. What do folks think about changing the process, at least in that way?
Can you go back to what you were saying about the goals being Dr. Guillory's goals? Because we do need to make sure that we're not overstepping. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's my understanding that, we have our own goals. We have school committee goals. Those are our goals. And then the superintendent has his or her goals. They actually present them. And so, but we can have input, we could say, we're hearing a lot about family engagement. I'd love to have some indicators. I think one of the things that might help us is if, both for our own goals and when he does his goals, if we stick to what they call SMART goals. Because part of the problem we're having right now is he's given us goals, but I know he's missing this.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we just pause for a minute.
Yeah, I'm not sure we should be having this discussion.
Yeah.
Right at that, so.
Yeah. So if you just, in the meantime, you wanna look at SMART goals, it's on Glenn's memorandum. Sometimes they call them SMARTY goals. Because they're now inclusion and equity. So you know what the current.
It's right at the corner of Linden. You could be there. But pick up for Karen. Okay, don't be late, right? Sorry.
So we would pause for a second, so you could hear that. You know, again, we were talking about, we will have goals and you will have goals with some input. We're gonna do a little bit of that now, more in September. But it might be helpful if we really try to focus on what they call SMART goals, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely, inclusion, equity. That's the IE. SMARTY.
I've also heard T being time bound as opposed to timely.
Yeah.
Which are different.
They are, yeah.
One of the things that I would find helpful, now that we have the strategic plan, is to have a clear link between what you're putting in blindness between the strategic plan and your goals. And probably for us too, it seems like all of us should be rowing in the same direction, and the direction is the strategic plan. So, I don't think yours were disconnected this year at all, Linus. I just think it would be really nice if we were all explicit about how we're working to support the strategic plan.
I think we have it. You have metrics for the strategic plan.
Yeah, that's the nice thing, is
And
it's
is
already
there a
built in.
timeline?
Yeah, there's this whole, it's already, that's the other thing, it's already smartified.
Yeah, so what if we were to see the progress towards that middle of the year? Rather than waiting until the end of the year?
Well, usually, as I think Glenn suggested in here, you should have a mid-year
Check-in.
check-in.
Right.
Whether you wanna add, subtract, correct, you know, that's the point of a mid-year.
And the professional practice goal is about you, Linus, right? And as opposed to, and so that's the nice thing, where that's where you can do all that other stuff you're doing. But the other goals tied to the district itself.
And Glenn says that in here, so good reading. He says
Oh,
that the superintendent professional goals is his.
yeah, right,
And it's
exactly.
the most flexibility.
Yeah, right.
And Linus is doing it.
In spades, right? You've got all kinds of stuff you're
Yeah,
up to.
he's got tons of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm
Tri-county,
hearing
whatever.
so far is that fine to have a meeting in September where we're discussing some proposed goals and focus indicators with the understanding that this is not really an opportunity for us to push our own agenda. It's sort of a way for us to make sure, as you're saying, that the superintendent's goals are kind of aligned with the strategic plan in an explicit way.
I'm presuming that maybe I'm saying this in a different way from exactly what you're saying. But we're essentially, Linus is saying, this is what I'm thinking, and we're giving any feedback we might have before it's finalized. Is that more or less what you're saying?
More or less,
Okay.
yeah. And then what about having like a check-in and I guess mid-year in this case, if they're going to be adopted in October and the evaluation occurs over the summer, then mid-year would mean something like March or
February, March, yes.
A nice
That's
quiet time of year.
yeah.
When is that quiet?
Exactly.
February vacation.
Well, can I ask a tangential question? I thank you, Betsy, for providing us with all of the meeting dates for the year. And I had to put them in my calendar because I don't use Google Calendar, which was actually kind of helpful. I had to see. So I think there's a 4-week period in February where there are no meetings. Is that
Oh,
sort of?
there's
No.
At least 2 or 3.
No.
Yeah, because we
Just
have to do
finance
budget.
alone needs twice.
In February?
Yeah.
Well, we have February 6th, a meeting with legislators on February 10th and a meeting on February 13th. And then later that month, we have vacation.
Okay, so February 13th, and then when was the next one after that?
The next is March.
You're right, there is that.
Okay,
But there's
so
also other
There's
meetings
that
going on.
vacation week, so
Yeah.
you couldn't have it this, you know.
So
I don't know
February
why.
13th to March 12th, there's no meetings.
There's meetings, maybe just not.
No
Not
school
a full
meetings.
school committee meeting. I'm sure we'll find other reasons to.
Maybe there could be, my point just being, maybe there could be, you could look to that sort of break period for a dedicated meeting if you want to
Oh,
do that sort
I
of.
guess I wasn't thinking that we have a dedicated meeting for this. It's just a check-in, so like an agenda item in a regular meeting.
And then I also would love to request, which I think I've asked you, Andy. As far as I know, with respect to the strategic plan, there isn't a document, there isn't like an accessible, there's a slideshow that you can access on the website, so I would love to just reiterate the request for something that one could print out and sort of have. in a-
So I have a
Yeah.
36-page booklet that's been
Amazing,
so-
how exciting,
Awesome.
cool.
put in the final.
Close, thank you.
Sorry, Andy, so what was it you were proposing for?
You really
for
wanted it on
For what?
paper, or you
For
wanted.
goal setting?
like-
For goal setting and focus indicator picking.
It does.
Because the two kind of discretionary pieces here, so, a discussion in September. Where, that regularly would already have some proposals and we would offer feedback from whatever point of view. And then in October, they'd be presented for approval. And then it seems like maybe February, there'd be a check-in on progress.
Well, it might be nice, just going back to this discussion of the evidence matching the goals, is if we could maybe not like that September meeting, but just what is the evidence being offered? In support, what you plan to collect evidence on, Linus, in support of the goal. Just so we're all knowing, I mean, it'll be interesting, that's an interesting conversation and.
In this case, it was a focus indicator that, where Stephen was saying that the evidence didn't quite match the rubric.
That's my
I just want to
point,
say that I think your
Not a
proposal
goal,
was
yeah.
really great.
whatever, sorry, the wrong word, focus indicator, not goal.
Sorry, it's just all of this, because I had.
Yes, you
Okay,
really, you
that's-
lived and
I
breathed
did.
it, yeah, so, right, so what the focus indicators are that are gonna be under each one, and then or however, I don't know, however all this works. Just like, whatever the evidence is gonna be, I know it gets tricky, right, because there's those. Are they collected by goals? Now I can't even remember, no. The standards are different than the,
Yeah.
And the goals.
yes. Okay, but but we're supposed to understand it as the standards, focus indicators
But-
also
but,
support
yeah,
the goal.
Right, if you look on page 3 of the aggregate evaluation, you'll see that each learning goal is also associated with 1 or 2 focus indicators.
Right,
So,
yes, so anyways, just understanding how that's all gonna come together. And maybe it might be helpful for you, Linus, too, to hear like, we think you're working blah, 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 that you know you're collecting information on would be really compelling, and so it would be helping you collect the data that we think is the most supportive.
Sounds good.
it seems like we have consensus on how we run the process next year, or were there any other kind of evaluations?
I think I have a question. Let me just read this again to make sure I understood, remember what my. This might be just really basic and kind of dumb, but there's no dumb questions. Dr. Guillory, in your goals that this was provided as part of this, goal 1, supervision and evaluation. The third bullet, the last sentence says, the focal point of my work with principals this year will be in the area of student engagement. What does that mean? And I don't mean that doesn't make sense. I'm really interested in, like, when you say student engagement, what does that mean
So
to
for
you?
me, and my work with principals was looking at what were the tasks or what were the students actually doing when they were in classrooms. So what was their, what were the types of things that they were exposed to? Were they
Yeah.
doing complex readings,
Yeah.
et cetera? It wasn't necessarily looking at the whole child in terms of, are they engaged in this activity or that activity after school? So it's really looking at what's happening in the classrooms.
Okay, so you are working with principals to focus them on that
Some of
question.
that And the
Understood.
notion is with that, so much work happened during the COVID years where their attention was diverted to heavy operations for all the obvious reasons. And
Right.
so by
Right.
as the expectation is as the
Bless you. Yeah.
chief instructional leader for
Yeah.
the building, how then do we
Bring it
get
back. Yeah.
And with that
Awesome.
laser-like focus.
Thank you.
So it's an iterative process and ongoing. So,
Bless you.
bless you.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Maybe if we could document somehow, it would be great if the check-in could be tied to the rubric. Because I thought that rubric was a really helpful document for helping me think through what is an example of evidence a superintendent can provide to a school committee that would help a school committee assess whether a superintendent is successful along the lines of a particular indicator. Because sometimes it was hard for me to separate a superintendent's performance from a deputy superintendent's performance. Should I give the superintendent credit or demerits for a deputy superintendent's performance? But the rubric was really clear on how to think about how to assess the superintendent himself. So I thought that would be a helpful way to do a mid-year check-in, is to present evidence along the lines of that rubric or the example evidence, which was, I thought, a different cut at the same thing.
Okay.
Seeing no more hands, I think we can move on to the next agenda item, which is together we will be discussing draft 2025-2026 school calendar. So 15 minutes ahead of schedule.
All right, so let's try to orient you to what's in your packets here. And I will, in full disclosure, two things. Helen started by talking about her eyes and get my eyes examined because I think the amount of screen
Arms are long
time
enough.
it's getting to me. I mean, I'm
Linus,
Yeah,
we're getting
more-
old, let's just accept
Well,
it.
and then it's like doing this
Yeah.
on.
That's the old thing, that's
Yeah.
presbyopia right there.
I
Yeah.
feel-
You
yeah.
get 45 to 48 and it happens.
It's happening. So, and the second thing is I'm on calendar overload because I've been looking at multiple iterations of this. I'm gonna try to do this in a coherent fashion, so please stop and ask questions.
Just to
along
be
the
clear,
way.
we're looking at 25, 26.
You're looking at
The
25
24, 25 is
and
all.
already been adopted.
And
That's correct.
so we're looking 2 years ahead or just one?
So the committee asked for us to have 2 years worth of calendars on the
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit behind, but soon in the beginning of the year, we'll bring the next iteration out to you so that we'll always have.
It's awesome,
Two of
Linus,
those.
having 2 years out is so good,
Yeah.
like that we're doing next, or
Right.
2 years from now is great.
So you have two, and I don't know what color you want to call them. But two, what color is this thing?
Let's say so.
Wait, aren't they the same thing?
No, that's why I'm pointing it out to you.
Oh, wow.
Like the
They
same
are
color.
cinnamon.
Cinnamon, we'll go with cinnamon.
There's an 8/8/24, one's a
Wait,
4.
let me orient
Ah,
you.
okay.
So one, that says draft, Public Schools of Brookline draft. That's, you could call that our current calendar propagated out to the 25-26 school year.
The one that's the 8-8 one.
One that's the 8/8.
Okay.
The next calendar says draft additional category 1
Oh,
holiday.
yeah.
Public Schools Brookline draft. So, and if you just zoom down to the end, calendar 1, we'll call it that, ends on June 18th, 2026. And calendar 2 ends on June 23rd, 2026. Are you with me so far?
Yeah,
Yes.
so you've added 2
I've added
holidays,
2
so there's 2
holidays,
days, okay.
Yes. So, and part of this is to have the broader conversation about, do we want to consider, or what might be the process by which we consider when there's a community request to add a different holidays to the calendar, how might we do that? So I've mocked up a calendar that has a request in to add 2 additional Eid days to the calendar, Eid al-Fitr and Eid
All off.
Adha, yes, al-Adha. So that's the mock-up there.
But the second Eid is in both calendars.
No, but
No.
one is a calendar category 2, which is just no homework, and one's category 1, which is no school.
Oh, that's a 2 there.
Yeah, it's a messed up
I
two.
see, it's a.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we'll clean them up, make sure that they're right before they go up. So part of the next page that you have should say Public Schools of Brookline 2020, 25, 26. It's just a page and note that we give to the DEU, because part of the contractual obligation is that we notify them very much in advance of the calendars before they get voted, and we've done that part as well. So just their notes to the BDU. This is when teachers report. This is the first day of school. These are the holidays. These would be the last day of snow days, all of those types of things. So these are the cliff notes that we give to the DEU.
So, it's one quick question.
Mhm.
So we no longer have to, we can't. It used to be we could only start after the 1st of September.
With
Has-
That
students.
changed.
With students, it says, or?
Well, we could negotiate, if we negotiated with the union, we could start before, but we'd have to.
Okay, but it
Yeah.
says with students, not just the teachers
Well,
will
with-
report.
Yeah, with the
for us?
teacher, it says the Wednesday before, September 1.
Oh, okay,
So, so we're in compliance there.
that used to be a problem. That's
Right.
that's-
Yeah. So then you see my note or my letter to the community, and there are a couple of things in here that I'll correct also. But in general, what this does is it does a nice summation of saying what the different categories are. So category 1, what does it mean to be a category 1? It essentially says that the absences would be so high that we couldn't run school that day. So this is sort of the evolution of what constitutes a category 1 holiday. This is what we're currently operating. We want to change that. We have opportunity to have input on that. Category 2 are the no homework days, and then category 3 is again just an acknowledgement of the day for the amount of folks within our community that are impacted by it. So
But the
that,
day 3, students can ask for like a delay in
Right.
a due date or something like that.
so that's that information. And then we have the days listed out here. So part of what the reason that I'm bringing this forward is because the group did meet with me and wanted to add the 2 additional days to the calendar as such. And so when I go back and look at sort of as category 1 days, so that's why you see the 2 calendars marked up here. And in doing so, we started looking at what's the impact. What's the unintended impact of what happens here? So when we look at our calendar this year, for the given number of category 1, category 2 days that we have, it starts restricting what we do instructionally in the building. And so our principals have said this year that we just went out was one of the first years where, because of the number of standard holidays in category 1, category 2s that we have, they've had to start testing students on early release days and testing students on Fridays. So those types of things will show up or manifest themselves in other ways that they'll have unintended consequences on us. No, most kids, I would say no, most kids, bell rings at 12:40. The rest of the school is gone, but yet I'm taking an MCAS exam, for example. I'm going to be distracted. I have the potential to be distracted with those types of things. So I've discussed this with building leaders, as well as a district leadership team. And there were a wide range of opinions. We should get rid of all holidays. We should.
That feels extreme, okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
We should get rid of.
Although Mariah, I actually think districts are moving that way and not in this way.
I'd like to eliminate from this, actually, like Good Friday. I don't think that people are necessarily doing things all day. I'm not sure
Well,
that they are.
so some folks have said that they don't believe that people celebrate the holidays in the way that they traditionally.
Yeah.
Some districts actually do a half day on Good Friday so that they.
My least favorite days are half days because it's a waste of one 180th.
Yeah.
And category 2 days come in a close second because it's a day, but you're not allowed to actually treat it like a day. I'd rather we actually held the day as a true holiday and reserve the school day as an actual proper full school day. That's
Okay.
my,
Here's the reason I'm bringing.
yeah.
This, because again, it's, so then what's next? What's the next holiday that we then add? The other implication, that, there are some that are doing what Val is saying as well. But then the amount of restrictions, to your point, that it actually puts on what can happen instructionally in the building. You can't give homework the day before, you can't give homework the day after.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind that the state is looking at adding the civics exam as an MCAS in another year or so. So more testing windows. We have our
There's more days.
more days, all of that. It just really constricts and confines the calendar what we can actually do.
My goal is that each one of our 180 days is as effective as it can be. So if it means there can be homework given, there's homework given. If it means we can get rid of some of the early dismissal days, we get rid of some of the early, or we minimize some of the early dismissal days, we do.
I'll just jump in. I'll sort of second what. I question Good Friday. I don't celebrate it. My husband did growing up, but he grew up in Ireland. So I guess I would pose Good Friday as a question, and maybe all of the closure holidays as a question. Like, is there a way for us to gather some data that would tell us how important does that holiday remain in Brookline? There may be towns where majority of the school population does spend Good Friday in church. But if that's not the case in our town, then maybe it was relevant when it was first made a holiday. But I would definitely ask the question whether it continues to make sense in Brookline for that one, at the risk of offending anybody who does. I mean, there's always going to be, and so I guess I would add too, it's sort of I would be looking at if it's called low attendance.
Yeah, what's the threshold of
yeah,
low
yeah.
attendance, right?
So as an example, I looked, and again, we can always find the data that we're seeking and looking for, so we have to be mindful of that. But I looked at the 2 proposed days for this year. I looked at the day before and the day after, the day before, the day of, and then the day after to see what the attendance looked like this year. So back in April, April 9th, our attendance rate was 94% for that day. The holiday or the proposed day in question, the rate that day of attendance rate was 93.5%. And the day following was 92.8%. Again, that was also leading up to spring break.
What day of the week was the night?
This was a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then the second day in question,
You're talking about the Eid
the
holiday?
Eid, yeah. So June 14th, Friday, I think that was, yeah, Friday, that was the attendance rate that day was 95.9. The day of, which was the Monday before the last day of school, was 91.7, and then the last day of school was 88%.
But also
Does
that
that
data,
include-
but that data also doesn't reflect, there could be people who would have,
Well, that's
that's the
my
problem, right?
point.
They're having to make that hard
That's
choice,
exactly my
yeah.
point. So
Do we know the Muslim population of Brooklyn?
when we had our Diwali presentation, students did do some presentation. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers there, but I think it would be worth to the point of exploring with our community to see how are these days utilized within our community and get some input or some.
Wasn't the Wally also a request for a
Category 2.
Yeah.
So we've honored that.
Oh, I see. This is to convert the 2 Eid holidays to category.
To
Gotcha,
category
okay.
one.
Were there
Oh,
any,
to category 1.
Yes.
were there recommendations from the principals that rose to like the majority of the principals?
Not to add any more to the calendar.
Not to add, but any places where were there priorities that they held? Like cutting a certain day or reducing a vacation or adding holiday according to one priority and not another.
Right, not to add to the calendar means not to add holidays to the calendar.
Right, no more,
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
no more.
I misunderstood.
But are you asking also were there opinions expressed by principals of some that could be done away with that
Yeah,
we've had for a while?
Yes. So.
Winter solstice,
What?
what is that, you can't give homework before and after?
That's not it.
No, that's just.
So that's
Category
category 3, that's just an FYI.
Oh,
Category 2 is the homework holidays.
So
Okay.
one comment, let's get rid of all of them. I don't think people observe holidays in the ways that they did when this was created. We can monitor attendance for a year or two and make a decision to revise. The current days of low attendance in the calendar are there because of the high absence rates and do indeed impact the entire school. I don't think the proposed additions will have that impact, so they shouldn't be called days of low attendance. If we add additional days, should we look at half days at the same time? Do we need 3 half days for conferences? Looking further out to see the impacts of future calendars may be helpful. Concerned about fewer April and May dates for testing. At most, we have 9 days. We should consider the impact of snow days and how it may impact DSY orientations. If we add additional low attendance days, is there an option for eliminating February and April break?
Like consolidating into a March,
Oh.
going private school, okay.
Concerned about
20
going,
years ago, we tried to do that.
I don't hate
We
that
only do
idea.
I
it
don't
if
either.
Newton does it.
I don't hate that idea.
concerned about
I
going
don't hate that
into,
Oh,
idea.
I loved it, I pushed for it.
Really? So
But we
let's
couldn't
come
do
back.
it because
Let's
the
come back.
teachers didn't want to do it because their kids were in other school
Right.
districts
Yeah.
where their kids were in school. It's like the whole state has to do it or, you know.
But that's not true. Lots of private schools have March break and
Of
people
course,
deal with
but
it.
that's different. Your public school teachers have kids in other districts. So for them, it's a problem.
can we get rid of all the days of low attendance? We want to make sure A days are limited for those. Is there an option to have students attend school before Labor Day? Can we negotiate the conference release days that are K5 to K6 to K5? It would be best to.
That's a really good point. We should talk about that.
All of them I circled here, like, I wanna know every single early dismissal, what's happening that day that those people
The
aren't going to
6
school.
But the 6 is a really good point that I'd love to talk about. I have an opinion about it.
It would be best to eliminate all days
Great.
of low attendance.
Oh,
Adding 2 more is not great. I don't think we need all the K release days anymore. I agree that whoever wrote that, the proposed days are not really days of low attendance at this juncture. So that's where the leadership team sits, with their thinking on it. So.
Thank you. That's so helpful on the presentation. As a consumer of the school district, I like Mariah, deep experience on this and thought. So I'm glad the thing about the K through 6 came up. Because 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you can request a conference, but they are not scheduled conferences. as they are in K through 5. So there is this, it doesn't make a ton of sense to have 6 lumped in.
I think it even starts before sixth grade.
I've also questioned why there's one of the days where high school has an early release for conferences, but there are no conferences. So let's see,
High school
that's
uses their
December
PD.
3rd.
Yeah.
Okay, it says 7 through 12 teacher PD. Okay, thank you. It didn't used to specify that.
I think last year I was like harping on this and it got
Okay.
specified.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because during COVID, when we were, counting minutes, I think people looked at this stuff really closely. I'm also curious.
Well, then before you move on, just to make sure you have up-to-date information. So sometimes in some of the schools, my understanding is you can't request a conference for middle school. Like in school, the teachers ask in the parents that they want to meet with. Is that true? And so just so that you know, I think
The policy is that in 6 through 8, you can request a conference, but
just so you know.
regardless, it's been weird. I believe the policy is that in 6 through 8, parents can request a conference, but they are not scheduled like they are in 5 to 12.
I think it's gone even a step further in some schools that they don't accept parent requests. Instead, the teachers decide who they're going to see.
Well, that might be an issue that would be of interest to the school subcommittee, the policy subcommittee, because I believe the PSB policy is that teachers may request a conference.
Parents may request you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Parents may
Always
request.
request a
Yeah,
conference.
so
At any
if
time.
a school is
that's the point,
overriding
if they're
that and
saying, no,
saying,
you
no,
can't.
we won't conference with
different.
you,
Sure.
that if I was in that school, I'd have questions.
What's being proposed here is to
sorry.
abolish the early release, or I'm just not
Where
clear
are you
about
going?
what.
Sorry, I'm just going with, echoing one of the comments that Dr. Guillory read and that Mariah commented also, that lumping in an early release, putting 6th grade in with early release for conferences doesn't make sense because 6th graders don't have those scheduled conferences. So
So you are proposing that there no longer be early release of 6th graders?
I'm not sure I'm proposing that because I'll have rotten tomatoes thrown at me by the BEU, but I'm pointing out that it certainly seems incongruent with practice
So
and worth discussion.
remind me again, in 6th grade, do the kids have one teacher
No.
for English and stuff? Okay, because that's the way it used
Oh, no, they have, in 6th grade, they move around.
for all 4 subjects, the 5 subjects.
Yeah. They have different teachers.
So that's changed over time. I think, this probably still refers back.
Right. When I was in sixth grade, it was
Yeah,
one
when my
teacher.
kids were-
Yeah.
There
Right,
was
when
one
I was
teacher
in
for
sixth-
social
I
studies.
think this conversation might
Yeah.
be moving a bit
And
far
then I
afield
also
from
have
the
a
agenda. We're
question.
looking to,
Thank you.
we're looking to determine the 2024.
I have a question.
That's what we're talking about though, is whether we include these dates, right?
Yeah,
I
but this early release, I mean, I think if it's something we want to take up in the next round of.
But that's what's in the
bargaining,
calendar.
right?
This is what's in the calendar.
We're not going to sit here and abolish that, like for 6th graders today, right?
Well,
It's-
I guess
It's something we have to.
My request would be, let's go back and look at the contract and strip these back to as close as we can within the contract to meet the minimum requirements of the contract, as long as we agree that that is like pedagogically also what we want to do. But like, what makes me bonkers is this idea that kids wouldn't be in front of teachers on a day that the teachers aren't doing the conferences. I just want kids to be in front of teachers who aren't doing conferences and doing PD.
Agree.
Then whatever that is, that's sort of like my big thing on it.
I'd also love to understand, looking at November 4th, the PD, the sort of all district PD day. Why is that a Tuesday?
To do it for election.
Yeah, there isn't an election that year, but they're doing it anyway for that day. I think it's just because it's a practice, standard practice. to do it.
So maybe if there's not an election that day, that year, it could be Monday, November 3rd.
It should be Monday, November 10th, so that
Correct.
everyone else can have a 4-day weekend.
Yep.
Right, I mean, it should be on the 10th.
That makes sense.
Yes.
But Dr.
Or
Guillory,
you
in
do it during Veterans Day.
Dr. Guillory, in this discussion, are we being asked to approve one or the other of these two options for that year?
Or give me guidance on, if you just give me the general guidance on, are we adding more days to the calendar, then that can narrow, we could
For
certainly.
category one,
But the tricky
Category
thing
one.
about this
Yeah,
is,
so
we're talking
we're not
about
voting.
2 years from now, not this upcoming year.
We're not actually.
So
voting
my,
either.
I guess my request is maybe what Carolyn is, which is maybe like just a poll of the community. Would you actually not, should not show up to school that day if we didn't make these days? I don't know if we can do that, but like, or to have it be a pilot year where we do remove all these days and see what the impact is. I don't know. I mean, I just, what I don't, and if people don't want to do that, that's okay. The worst category for me is category 2. I don't want things in category 2 because it's the worst kind of day, which is the day that we cannot do tests, we can't do homework, it affects the day beforehand, the day of, and the day after.
but maybe there could be some special dispensation for those kids who do
Right.
observe
That
those.
basically
that's what-
means some kind of-
Category 3, which is, it's individual to you. It's not that everybody doesn't have homework, it's that the kids who are observing, which is entirely appropriate, should get accommodations. I don't understand why everyone needs an accommodation for, like, category 2 doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm missing something.
I agree, and I agree with what I think Dr. Guillory was saying. In my experience, it really kind of undermines the seriousness of school. Like, I hear from, there's, when you have your teenagers saying like, there's no homework, it's a no homework day, it's a no homework day, it's a no homework, it's like every day seems to be a no homework day. And I have to, it sort of feels, it undermines how seriously school is taken in my experience. And generally, to answer your question directly, Dr. Guillory, I would say I would not be in favor of adding additional category 1s. I would be in favor of looking for eliminating category 1s. And like ending school already on June 23rd is so late. The idea of ending on June 26th is really rough. Like, that's just not a good idea.
Wasn't it the 23rd?
Sorry, 23rd, thank you.
I think if you're going to do this, you may need to have some public comment time or something. People,
Well, I presume we're gonna have.
I really don't like the idea of sort of polling people or asking people to basically come to us and tell us how large your community is and how likely
Yeah,
you are
that's not
to
gonna
not come to school that day. We're
because
just
then
pitting,
it's,
we're pitting one
it's-
community against.
And
another.
just
Why
to
are we
be
pitting
clear,
any
that wasn't
community
my
against each other?
suggestion, I was just asking.
It was my
if we
suggestion,
know.
but I don't see anyone being pitted against each other.
like
No.
my
It's gonna be,
holiday is.
I'm not holding my
one
religious
year.
holiday, why are you getting your religious holiday and I'm not getting mine? I don't think we should be going there.
Well, I think the whole point was originally their days of low attendance. So the question isn't, is your holiday important? It's would you show up to school in such a way that so many kids would be impacted, that other kids would all be impacted, that we're basically losing a whole
Well,
day
no,
because
you
we're
don't-
teaching the
You don't
material.
get, the state doesn't give you.
Oh, is it the
doesn't
80%
accredit it.
threshold or whatever it
Some
is?
sort of, I don't know what it is, but there's.
What is the state threshold?
I
Is
have
it
to look
80?
back at it. I don't know if it's that.
And I am
The point
sensitive
is
to the
that-
idea that there's a whole bunch of kids who, like, even if it's not 80%, even if we would have still have 85%, that we don't want a whole bunch of kids to feel othered, and, but it's not about it's not saying we're prioritizing Jewish holidays or Christian holidays or Asian holidays, or I'm just looking at the ones on the date, on the category 1 right now. It's saying we're not prioritizing holidays, religious holidays, unless there's a true impact on the operations of the school. I guess my question is, what is that threshold though?
I mean, part of it, I think, is not just only low attendance, but does it in some way penalize students who want to be out because of that day? So even if you have that day, we have school on that day, students may feel that they are targeted or singled out because that's not a day they can come to school because of family religious obligations.
But that's true for everything in category 3 as well. So should we be adding all of those?
But
No.
what is the obligation of these new holidays that we're looking at? And what's the obligation of Good Friday, I should know this. Going to mass.
Get that, the cross of the ash cross on your forehead.
That's.
No, that's what-
Oh, see, I don't even know what's on Good Friday. You can see what a good Christian I am. Right, what is Good Friday? I don't even know.
It's
the day
it was-
Crucified.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
There you
remember
go.
on
What it is,
Sunday,
see?
It's a high. It's the Friday before,
Dr. Gillies, is
Easter, that much I
is
know.
So
that-
can I just chime in before I have to jump? I will say that I observe that holiday, but I still don't think we should have it off. But I'm of the opinion that we should have no religious holidays and that everybody should have their own accommodations per category 3.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Can you say more on why, Val?
Val, Steve asked a clarifying question.
Yeah, because I believe in separation of church and state, and this is rooted a lot in a bygone era in my mind, and where there's sort of one majority religion in this country, and that's just not the way it is anymore. But I think that we'll go down a rabbit hole of many options for category 1, and I think that it's a personal choice on whether you observe that holiday or not, as a religious or non-religious person.
My gut would be with Val on that one. If we actually abolished all religious holidays for category 1, that leaves a single category 1 holiday that actually affects whether we have school, and that would be Lunar New Year. And which seems a little odd for that to be the only.
and
holiday
does
that's still
Lunar
on the
New
list.
Year require people to be someplace during the day?
I mean, you could be feasting, but it's not required, right? It's just not that sort of holiday.
And is it a category 1 now?
Yes, it is.
It was added a couple of years ago. Because it's the day of low attendance, there is and that title, Day of Low Attendance, is the whole idea is that there's a significant population in Brookline who celebrates Lunar New Year, who weren't able to stay up late and eat or whatever the night before and the day of and all of that.
So the data showed low attendance?
I think the issue is there's no way to prove it, because until you allow people to actually have the choice to go, like the students said they were conflicted. They felt like they had to go to school, and now they don't feel like they have that conflict between home life and school life. So kids were having to go to school.
After staying up late.
There's a comment here that, category 3 for Hanukkah. It's actually, it says Sunday, but it means Monday, and it's absolutely should not be on this list. There's absolutely no restriction about homeschool on Hanukkah, right? So it shouldn't even show up here.
But that one is just if you have homework accommodations for category 3, right? I'm not saying, it's just that it's not about even going to school or not.
And
There's
yes,
just nothing that you do that like.
well, no, there's no reason.
Prevent you from doing homework.
You can do your own. So I'm saying it shouldn't even be on the list at the beginning. It should.
Do you have a sense, Dr. Gilroy, of how it would go over if we actually abolished all the categories? I personally am liking that idea.
Me too.
And Carolyn, right?
I'm intrigued. That's not my straw poll vote, but it's intriguing. I mean, we've just
So we're
gone
gonna go
too
to school on
far.
Christmas?
Well, no.
That's winter break.
Winter
Right,
break.
no
But
one
I
goes
do
to
agree
school
with
on
you
Easter,
that-
it's Sundays.
But I do agree with you that that's the question, is like, oh, well, if we were gonna abolish
doesn't have
it,
to be listed.
but if we did away with winter break, then it would theoretically be a regular school day.
Would you be more comfortable if instead of religious holidays, we said bank holidays, right? So we could still have some of those days.
I don't think it says they're religious holidays, it's days of low attendance.
The days of low attendance,
And
I
that-
tried to look up what the state threshold is, and I couldn't get it.
I swear during COVID, we heard it was 80%.
Do you know how many districts, or do many districts still have no school on Good Friday, and do many districts have no school on Lunar New Year? That you know of?
Lunar New Year is not as widely adopted. I think Good Friday is still one that a number of districts take. I was surprised to see that some, I know for when I looked at Watertown, for example, they do a half day on Good Friday. In order to have it counted 180. We'd have to just do some research on
Yeah.
collecting them. But again, it's what some districts are doing are shifting to accommodate the demographics or the makeup of their communities. And so that's the ebb and flowing. But I've seen-
Lexington has the Lunar New Year.
yeah, I think Lexington has added it now, but there are some districts that are saying, they've negotiated with their union partners to start before, one superintendent I was talking with said that they negotiated with their union to start before September 1. But now with the addition of all these days, they're just back to their original getting out late June. And the whole purpose of starting it earlier in August was to actually get out sooner. But with the addition of the days, it's just stretched back out. So it's all of those things wrapped. So it's not a,
And what was your experience in other parts of the country?
so Texas was, Christian-based, holidays.
Yeah.
And when I was in Ithaca, New York, if I remember correctly, we actually went to school on the Jewish holidays, but those staff members and students that were celebrated were able to miss school as such. So
New York City has a.
Yeah.
Suzanne, where are you at on this one? Where are you at on this?
I'm intrigued, but I also think it's this, I don't know, we're just, I don't think the community is ready for it. I don't know if we want to start leaking the idea, having some conversation. I don't want conversations to pit people, but
I think we should pick our battles,
this is.
and I think the other piece that, I'm sorry.
I also am intrigued because it's not just rolling a couple of days back. It's just gonna get hotter. It's that whole final week too.
Yeah, that's kind of it. There's this whole temperature
Yeah.
component to this, which is really like, we're at the
We're not-
pivot right there. of
We've
the
only
temperature.
just started retrofitting
Yeah.
buildings for temperature too, so
Yeah,
I'm just thinking of how the BU is gonna be talking about unreasonable temperatures in the building earlier and earlier as we go forward too, so it behooves us to look to consolidate days as much as we possibly can, so everything should be on the table.
Maybe we should kind of leak it to
Well,
you as a conversation.
One way to
starter.
do it is to get the professional development, negotiate for the professional development day at the beginning of the school year, the end of the school year, at a different time. That's one thing, so that takes away a day. Some years, some of these holidays, because of the lunar holidays, they fall, on different times, different, days of the week. I would not recommend getting rid of the category 1. I think
I certainly
it's
don't
gonna
think, I
raise-
think none of us want to simply make a decision, and I think it's something that a number of us are intrigued with starting a conversation around. With maybe the long-term effect of determining whether it's feasible in a community like Brookline. But to respond directly to your question, Linus, about is adding on the table, I think with the current conditions, having Eid makes sense with what we currently have on the calendar. So, but only if we can look to contract elsewhere. I think taking an equitable approach to the major religious holidays is the right one. So I would want to include Eid as a holiday. And also look to contract where we can. Either by consolidating half days or by eliminating holidays that no one or that few people celebrate. So that would be my personal preference.
I think we should also remember the teachers who may celebrate these holidays.
I think we need to both talk to the community and also look at the contract. I haven't looked at it in the last couple months, but I'm not sure that some of this isn't written into the contract, so I think we need to look there. But I agree with what others have said about buildings and climate. We need to look at that and look at our calendar and to make sure we're not going too far into June. when things are really heating up in some of these buildings. But I don't think that we can eliminate everything today. I think we need to start talking to the community and listening to the community.
This wasn't a conversation to do that, right? This was just the beginning of. the
Yeah. No, I agree. But in terms of what we're voting on today, I'm going back to what our vote is today, and Linus, that's to add the 2 days or not. Is that right?
Yes.
Are we even
Are-
voting Linus or?
Isn't it, what's on your absolutely on the agenda? Is it, that's possible works? I mean, we could certainly.
No, it's just a discussion.
Discussion, okay.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful for you to do, like, do you guys do straw poll if it's not a?
I guess I'll ask Linus whether you feel like you've gotten what you needed out of this conversation.
Well, got a lot more.
Yeah.
But I do, I mean, I think the general sense is that it would be concerning going further, but again, this notion of, because we looked at where even like sort of the federal holiday Juneteenth fell, and I had Kathleen, we worked this calendar multiple ways to ensure that our initial proposal was having us in before then, because again, this notion of splitting right after that holiday, what's instruction, what's meaningful that's happening coming back either a day or 2 days
Watching a
after.
movie.
And so it's just sort of thinking again, what's our purpose? Our purpose is to educate children. And
I have a question about November to December. I think it happened this year too, but I don't have the calendar in front of the school calendar in front of me. But it's like November that's proposed here, there's 4 weeks of the month. 3 weeks have a broken week because of early dismissal, then there's a week of vacation, and then the following week, in first week of December, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, there are breaks in the week.
Yep.
Why are they clustered so much? Is that because of conferences?
those are the
You have like
early,
the early dismissal is the 6th, the 12th, the 20th, then vacation week, and then the 3rd right afterwards again.
yeah,
They seem to be
Like the end of the winter semester. It's like,
yeah, it's those.
But it's like 5 weeks of
Mhm.
broken.
Yeah.
structure.
which is why we don't want them if we
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
need them, for
Right,
sure.
So I'm
Well,
asking,
and again, it's looking at, because I went and grabbed my policy manual as well as the contract here, but the policy, is it page 8 here lists that there will be 4 early release afternoons scheduled for parent-teacher conferences twice per year in the fall and in the spring for grades 1 through 6.
Happens again in April.
And in April as well, so.
That's
Is there something wrong with November? Isn't Thanksgiving the third Thursday?
Which November?
The-
25.
25.
I was wondering that too. It looked odd, but I
It's
thought
always
maybe it
the
is.
third Thursday of the month.
I don't know if it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, could be. One other question I had, Lina, on this is the question about whether or not, especially now that BEEP is going to full day, whether BEEP or whether pre-K has an early dismissal or not, and what that looks like. And then some of the things here have, like, for example, November 26th, BEEP has an earlier dismissal than K-8, but now that BEEP is on a regular schedule, they should
Yeah,
probably.
we'll course correct.
Okay, yeah, just so like
Yeah.
those kinds of things. And then one note I made here,
On November 27th now.
Yeah, that's right.
one note I made here was that I really liked that we started adding in the high school graduation. 'Cause
Oh,
people
speaking of
always
that-
want to know.
Speaking of that,
Uh-huh.
on the additional category 1 holidays, that high school graduation day should be June 9th, not June 7th there. So that's gonna move it to a Tuesday. Because
The state caught
the
up with
state
us.
caught up with us, and so we have to make sure that the students, the last day is within 12 days of the last day of school. So that's gonna shift.
But that's for both of them anyway, right? Wouldn't that shift for both of them?
Not just,
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
because you pushed the last day. The other thing I was hoping is, can we add on, parents in K-8 are always desperate to know the 8th grade graduation, and everyone says, well, it's not set till the last day, it's set. That's true, but we also write the last day of school if no weather cancellations on here. It'd be really great to say the K-8 graduation is gonna be this day if no cancellations.
That's a good idea.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
They aren't all the same.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
there's that
we're
part
out.
of it, which are also.
Oh, some of them are on Fridays and we're
Right.
on Mondays. Has that always been the case or was it just
Yeah.
this past year? But I guess it's
been
happened.
Last number of years.
Okay.
We'll do a range, but it won't be the specific date.
And actually, I don't know that they have a waiver to not go to school, do they? So I mean, it really.
So
should
that's
be
the point where it
over.
says if no weather cancellations, just like it says here, last day of school.
No,
if
but
no
there's
weather.
no waiver for them like there's for the high
Mhm.
school.
But this is just graduation, not last day of school. It's their graduation.
Mhm.
Theoretically, they're supposed to come back after graduation. I don't know what people do.
Okay, so what it sounds like we'll do is we'll pick this conversation up again. We'll make some adjustments here.
I don't think there's anybody who said we should add a date. So if that's helpful.
Right, if we're gonna add something, we need to take something away, is I think at minimum the conversation, right?
So I think you have ending on June 26th, not
June 18th.
18th, sorry.
You know, Easter's always on a Sunday, so. Yeah,
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Why that's in the
It's just
capital.
athletic events, we can't.
Well, Christmas is always on the
But you
25th.
remember it's the day
Yeah,
after.
but that's sometimes a Wednesday, Monday through Friday.
So you're saying you don't have, like this category one, never, you're never gonna, you always.
No,
It's just.
I would support adding Eid,
Which one?
yeah, both Eids.
Okay. Sorry.
But would you say add them even if we don't delete anything else? You wanna add them?
No, I think we would have to find something to offset.
So you are, at
Well,
minimum, you're saying it
yeah,
would be net
I'm saying,
neutral.
I'm saying we should also, we can't say no adding. Period, because we should also take it, if we're gonna continue to have religious holidays, we should have an inclusive approach to the religious holidays. So.
They're
it
not
seems to be
religious
appropriate.
holidays, they're days of low
Yes.
attendance.
I wish that we could
Exactly.
come up with a definition. My request would be, can we have a definition of what that means and then run these holidays against it? Because that will clean up the question in our minds about if we have a reasonable definition and we actually, going back to SMART goals, know how to measure it, then the guesswork comes out of this.
So you're basically saying the community is voting with its feet on what days should be off.
I'm saying that if we agree that there's a definition of day of low attendance, whether it's the fraction of the Brookline population that is whatever category that this holiday would be supporting, I don't know what it is, right? But if there's a definition, we don't have to wonder, we just follow the definition.
Dr. Guillory, two things. One, I really appreciate this conversation and I appreciate your approach to this and what sounds like is your perspective, which is academic rigor and making sure kids are in front of teachers to the full extent possible. So thank you. And I support you on that perspective, if that is your perspective. Just going back to the beginning where we talked about low attendance and you had run some numbers, I think it was on the second E
Of the.
in June. I was wondering if your numbers included high school seniors who they like stop really early.
No, it only included, the way we take our snapshots, only those that were actually in attendance. But I'll double check with that with the data, team to verify that.
Okay. I guess I meant like if you were saying 80
Oh, I-
something percent of our students attended on June 17th. I don't think any seniors. And
I don't know that, what I'm saying is, I don't know that they were included in the baseline.
right, and that was sort of my
Yes,
question.
I'll
Yeah.
verify that.
I guess I would just say that, if day of low attendance is essentially the community celebrating a religious holiday resulting in that day of low attendance, and if there's a religious community that just doesn't meet that threshold, but it still is a significant religious community, we should make the proactive effort to include that religious community by demarcating out the calendar. It shouldn't just be that it doesn't meet the population threshold. So I think a proactive approach to being inclusive of those religious holidays is warranted. So that's the basis on which I'm stating my preference. So I don't think just the population threshold is sufficient for calendaring.
So what do you think is a significant threshold? I didn't catch it.
I think if it's a significant religious holiday. And we're continuing to have religious holidays on the calendar.
And they're just gonna keep coming.
So far it's the Abrahamic religions. Yeah, it is.
I understand, but otherwise you're then,
I don't think that's true, Andy. There's Diwali here.
But category one, right?
There's
For category one.
well, what's the alternative, Andy?
Hmm?
What's the alternative?
To have no religious holidays.
What's the immediate alternative?
To look into moving toward having no religious holidays.
And in the meantime, when there's a proposal to have Islamic holidays on the calendar,
If if our general direction is to be abolishing religious holidays altogether, then.
I don't think that's a guaranteed, I don't think that's a guaranteed direction. And I think in the meantime, there should be I would support a more proactive, inclusive calendar. And at the same immediate time, look to eliminate or consolidate other days, like say Good Friday, or reduce a vacation time. That would be what I would support.
I think there's also a reason aspect here, and I wasn't part of the conversations that. But if a religious holiday requires one who is observing to dedicate themselves to observing during the day and attend a house of worship or worship at home, then that is something to talk about. But if it's just if it's a holiday that you like, I mean, Jesse is an observant Jew and just out here and said, we don't need Hanukkah even on here. Well, my point is just that just because it's a holiday of importance doesn't mean it requires one to miss school in order to observe it. So that would be the sort of
Right, but
reason.
there are more days in the school calendar that you would miss as an observant Jew than the days of Hanukkah itself, more than 8 to 13, 14, so
Yeah.
depending on where they come out on the weekends or not. On that topic, by the way, the category 2 Passover one is on the wrong day. It's Thursday, April 2nd. I have it right. Yeah. It says Wednesday, April 1st, but actually, cruel joke, it actually starts, I think, so it'd be Thursday, April 2nd, which is a Thursday. And then again, observant kids in schools will be there the next day, either Friday.
Which one is that? That's it.
In category 2, the Passover day 1 is actually Thursday, April 2nd.
It's Thursday.
And then I'm not sure what it means down on category 3, Passover weather dates, it repeats the same, which is not obviously correct, and I don't know what the Saturday, Sunday like there, that's a Sunday, and a Monday, that's not even Saturday, Sunday, what's the April 19th, 20th? How they even get on those.
Do people generally think that category 2 is not something we want, which is the days where you can't do things for everybody? That we should have days that are category 3, which accommodate the individuals celebrating the holiday, but not days where no one has it, even though only some people are celebrating the holidays. No one could do homework or tests, even though some people are celebrating.
So Wally's category 2.
Wally's 3 on this thing.
Well, it would be moved up to 2.
Was that what
Yeah.
the students petitioned for?
Yes.
So if I recall, their argument was that they wanted more time to prepare for holiday and be with their
Right,
families.
that's what they said.
But why can't they under category 3?
I'm trying to remember their argument for category 2. Is that they wanted well, under category 2, they wouldn't have homework.
Under category 3, they don't
would.
have, no, they wouldn't. You can say to your teacher, I don't want to have homework. You have to ask for the accommodation, but category 2 is everybody doesn't have homework.
Thank you.
I like your thinking
We've
on.
we've now lost the time that we gained from being that's on the first agenda item, so I suggest we now move on to Jake Block on school committee governance.
There's another correction I gave you, but.
Thank you.
All right, so on the agenda, we have a discussion of school committee goals and norms, followed by one on goals and priorities. Would anyone object if we switch the order of that and talk first about goals and priorities, and then goals and norms? I think will be largely about communications, and that maybe the context will be set by our discussion of goals and priorities. So there are a couple of documents here. There's the goals and priorities from last year. We can begin by looking at reminding ourselves of those and figuring out to what extent we fulfill any of them.
Did we evaluate ourselves? on this?
Well, I guess we're about to do that. We have not done so in the course of the year. And then we can figure out whether we want to, retain any of these goals, discard some, add any others. And if we're thinking about adding others, I drafted a couple of proposed school committee goals for the coming year. And if people are willing to look at those, that would be great. Shall we begin by looking at last year's goals and seeing whether we did anything on them? All right, so that number one, there would be a community engagement plan, including school committee member visits to schools. We were supposed to assign a liaison to each school. We were supposed to have greater visibility at community events, and we were supposed to devise a media strategy of those community partnerships. I think we did the first. We did that with principals and visited schools. I'm not sure about really any of the others.
I ended up being at his graduation. I got to, and then they asked me to speak. I didn't know I was supposed
You
to.
don't have to.
You don't have to speak.
They called me up.
Oh.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
So they said, we're so happy to have Dr. Hefter here. He's now the rest of the grade.
Oh, geez.
They didn't tell you beforehand that you were
No.
going
No, I just thought it was
Oh.
like, they're gonna
That's
say,
usually what it
oh,
is.
school committee person.
Yes, they say thank you
So I
to
had-
school committee member Hefter
Right,
for
and
joining.
I did, and then they said, and now he's gonna come up to this.
And that's right, the Queen's wave is.
So I had about 35 seconds to think about it, walk up the steps and stand in front of the entire Hayes gym and come up with something.
They do that every year.
I'm sure
That-
you,
Yeah.
They have the school committee back.
Yeah, it was fun, it was fun.
Just the Hayes, just the Hayes.
Baker and
Nobody else
Stick
does.
in us too.
traditionally.
That's how we
Well,
haze.
No, when I was in.
All
When I was at Hayes.
right,
It was fun.
At Lincoln, I was asked if I wanted to hand out diplomas, and there are those
Oh,
teachers that actually know the kids.
That's right.
right, so I'm not sure we actually did any of the other components of this community engagement plan. In fact, we never really had a community engagement plan. It's just formulating one.
We talked, well, we went to Brookline Day,
We did, in the rain.
Yep.
Pouring rain.
pouring rain, off and on
You
pouring rain.
guys were there.
Yep, Suzanne and David and I went to, and Stephen was there,
I came by.
I don't remember.
I was pushing down on
Oh,
the
yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
We were there,
exactly.
Helen. Helen was definitely there.
There's
Thank you.
another agenda item later about whether we want to continue doing that. at least-
I actually do think we should do more of those, and I wonder, this is something I'm sort of throwing out there is, should school committee goals, the problem with some of these is they're not actually tied to any person doing them, and I feel like someone actually needs to be in charge of some of these things,
Yes,
like a specific person.
I couldn't agree more. And that applies also to my two proposed goals that I gave you on a separate sheet.
Okay,
Yeah, so we can come back to this one, but there was to support the district strategic plan. That's really very nebulous. We voted it through. And
Congress attended, we were on the.
yeah, on the
That
committee.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, and we also.
and that we attended and we did support it. We voted for it.
A number of us, mostly Suzanne, and I, have gone to a number of community events, whether it's
At the high school.
at the high school, there was a couple. that I
Couple of events
went
we
to.
had, yeah.
I mean, I happen to know the teacher that was being honored, I think it was for
Dan.
21st, yeah.
We also they had some community forums, talks,
Right,
right? We went to those,
we met with the Muslim population.
right? We were at the Muslim population, MLK, we were at the Jewish
We
population.
did that, I didn't get there, yeah.
I think the issue is more, do we have like a plan, that lays this stuff out as opposed to sort of individual members taking it on themselves to, participate.
Yeah, I mean, there are 9 of us, if we just, 2 or 3 of us show up at every event, that's our representation.
I mean, one of us showing up at an event is a representation.
That's true too.
It's also in the aftermath of my first done but there were several members who, who really put a lot of time into the things.
Maybe you could say each member does at least 3 events a year.
But can I just say though, sometimes we all have different roles to
No, I
play.
know, I know.
And I wonder if, without burdening Betsy with something else, but like when you hear an event we should go to, should we just put out a call for, can someone go to this? And I want to put in a plug again for having cheesy fluorescent vests or something that labels us as Brookline School Committee. I know you hate them. It could be something nicer than that. It could be a nice vest. It could be a t-shirt we all wear, something that is like, whatever, a name tag, a hat, I don't care. I hated the hats before. I'll go with hats now if that's what people want, but something that would be part of, that we're not just there in our civilian roles, we're there representing the committee.
Well, Andy,
You can also.
Andy, it looks
A
like,
sash.
Andy, it looks like you've proposed something at a higher level than community engagement. Do you see community engagement as a potential piece of a governance handbook? Or do you see community engagement
This
as
is
a
what the
possible?
administration.
Those are subtle, they're extremely nice.
Oh,
That's nice.
How do we get one? Can we buy
And then-
it?
You want like
And then
this,
it
like,
says-
Well, I want something because it's, you can't
It could
read
say
from
school.
far away who that is, but right, if it had school committee on it or something like that, yeah, that would be great. That, the only problem with that is you can't wear it June through August, right?
You can
Which
go
is why I
back.
was trying to do an
You can go
all-weather thing.
Best is-
That's what I,
You know, some things are like kind of fancy, like graduations, and some things like.
Well,
down the
graduation is clear who's up.
that's right, graduation is different.
That's not.
It would be for more casual.
I'm thinking like Brookline Day, the Park Day that's coming up this Sunday, those sorts of things where you have a booth and someone says, oh, who's the school committee member? And you say, it's Suzanne, she's in the blue vest.
No, I don't really.
I know, everyone didn't like fluorescent. That's why I switched to blue just now.
Stephen, to answer your question,
I like that.
I was thinking that the governance handbook might cover communications norms, but not like a community engagement.
So that could still potentially be a third goal.
A separate thing.
I still, Andy, would love if you would assign us as liaisons to schools. I think that that would be really valuable to have an individual to each school. And this was our plan last year, and it said each member shall be, or every member. I think we just need to be assigned. And then the principal knows to invite us, the PTO knows to invite us, we start to build that ongoing relationship.
I mean, my thought might be that we can figure out some of the things we want to happen. I'm not sure we need to elevate it as like an actual school committee goal. It's sort of an ongoing thing. And it's sort of up to all of us to make it happen. And just a large extent, it's a lot of these things are happening already, just not in a very organized way.
Well, we all can't collectively assign ourselves schools in these programs. I think
I mean, I guess I'm saying I do a lot of the kind of assigning stuff, but if there's consensus that people want to do the things that are listed here, I'm not sure we need to make it like an explicit goal, but we can just the way we do liaisons to organizations, like I kind of make the assignments and people go out and liaise.
For the community events, what works really well for me is to have a document we can all write into. Because if I have to take the extra step to write to Betsy that I'm going to do something, it's like more work for me and more work for her. So if we can just plug our names in. And then also it pushes me because I say like, oh, wait a minute, that event nobody's there at. So I know I have information.
So that's
It's a shared doc.
do you feel like you're in a position to kind of just know about all the events that we might want to?
Well, I do try to look through all the school newsletters for the schools that do them, not all of them, like Hayes, I think only does it once a month, so it's a little harder, but some of them do them once a week. And I do forward those as well, so you would maybe know which one to pay most close attention to if that was your assigned school.
and there's also big community events, like you know about those too, you hear about them. Yeah.
We used to have a
Make them
calendar that had, I think you've done it again, but I don't think we feed you enough stuff. Like the BF Margaret Metzger award. That night is a nice night for a couple of people to go to. Like, if one of the organizations, the Innovation Fund has the gala, 1 or 2 people could go.
But it's also not just the education focused ones, but sort of community focused.
Well, that's the Success has their event. Everybody has an event at some point.
I don't like the idea of a school liaison because I think people have more or less free time to show up in person to stuff. So I think some schools will really benefit from people who have a lot of availability and some schools won't benefit. And I think a shared calendar would help us apportion ourselves more evenly to the schools. So I would prefer a shared calendar of all the community events. Plus, I would prefer to be able to go to varying school events rather than just go to one school's events.
Right.
Let's give it a whirl.
Yeah, I also think the liaison is it's a different role.
It is,
than-
but-
Yeah.
I didn't feel like, yeah, it's a different role,
It's
but
checking in with the,
Yeah.
PTO and administrator.
I also see it as someone who might go to the school site council and say hi, whereas we might not all want to pop in on a school site council. It's a little bit different. I feel like everyone should be willing, or it should be open for anyone to want to go to the FR carnival or whatever.
International.
Yeah, or those kinds of things, right? Those could be on the calendar, but this idea of a more intimate relationship with you and the principal where, or you and the school site council, or you and the PTO chairs.
That's fair.
And are you saying you think that is a good thing?
Yeah, I do. I think that there's a, as we think about community and the school committee, there's this sort of, in how I perceive it is people think of the school committee as this amorphous blob of people who they don't actually know who they are. And they're like, the school committee 10 years, I don't trust the school committee because 10 years ago, and like, that's not us, right? So like, or 5, like whatever it is. And so, what?
Well,
It's Helen, but that's not all of us, right? And so how do we start to humanize? And it's easier to do it in a one-on-one relationship. And then it makes people feel like you give them your cell phone. You're like, oh, call me, whatever, there's that.
Can I ask how the liaisons have worked out so far with the town and school organizations that were assigned a couple months ago? Like, have people managed to get in touch and sort of start to build relationships there?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're the same ones I had before.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
right,
well,
right.
I know yours.
But I find that those liaisons, those are the kinds of relationships which I think would be nice and we don't have with the schools. And that's like, with the extended day program, I have a great relationship. I go to meet with them, whatever, like it's more of a personal relationship. As one example.
So can we sort of have all solutions, like, could Andy allow us to sort of self-select a school that we're going to follow, but we're not putting it into our goals? And we could talk amongst ourselves, or if I sort of know who's going to be at Lawrence, I choose Lincoln, just to sort of spread it out. But we don't have to have it be an official goal, but would you be comfortable with that? Sort of like we all try to make it to one school on a regular basis and build a relationship, but it's not a formalized situation. And then we have the sign-up sheet for the events.
I don't know what the benefit is of it not being written out.
Okay.
I just don't know.
I guess I was thinking about if we're trying to get more people to be involved in school committee, and they have day jobs, it's harder for them to sign up if we create obstacles. So like if I know that you're kind of the Lawrence person, but I happen to have more free time, I check in with you and say, you know what, I got that one for you, and.
But you're talking about going to the meetings. You can go to the meetings anyway. Nothing's stopping you from going to the meetings. The liaison is just basically saying to them, hey, I'm your school committee liaison. If there's anything you need for help, let me know. It's not like you have to go to all the
Okay,
events.
so it can cross the line, and we have to be careful. Because if they need help, they should be going to Linus or to Susan or to Jody, not to us.
That was my
Or the
thought too, is every
principal.
principal actually going to welcome having
I
a
mean, the
school committee
principal,
liaison?
I'm assuming that's.
Yeah, but they could say, oh, well, I wasn't necessarily thinking of principals. I was thinking more of the PTO or whatever. But even the principal, hey, it's great to, if there's anything like, you want.
Don't you meet with the principal, with the PTOs every month?
We meet with them as a large
Yeah.
group every other month.
They know you.
They do, but that's my point is they know maybe me and Steven and Val this year, but they don't necessarily know all of you. That's the whole idea. So we are actually getting really good communication with them, even through that once every other month. It seems like it's opened up a new
And
channel.
under your proposal, like the PTO would get to know at most one other school committee member.
Which is a good thing, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I found while running the campaign for school committee that principals I reached out to did not want to meet. And now I found out through a backdoor that one of the reasons they didn't want to meet is because they don't want to meet with candidates. They'd rather meet with a school committee member. So after the campaign was over, I got elected, then I wrote another email with them, spoke too close to the end of the year to do anything. But I would like to go into the schools and meet with school leaders. And I would like to be able to get to a site council meeting, everyone I found I missed, you know, I mean, like, it already happened, nobody told me. I think it'd be good to develop those relationships. And I would just add to that, if we know when they are, then we can, to your point, we can, Sarah, we could, sign up that we're gonna go there or just go and then add it to the list so that when we want to measure what have we done in this topic, we have a running list of all the things we've done. Not because we have to prove it to anybody, but just so that we're showing how we're gauged.
Yeah, do you think principals and budget facilities would always want us to be there? I mean, you know, they eventually will present their school improvement plans to the school committee, but are they necessarily going to want a school committee member sitting in their meetings?
Well, I'm not recommending that we do it to everyone, but I'm saying to be able to represent this, just to be there from school committee. At one time during the first half of the year or the second half of the year, unless they have some past history where it didn't work well for them, which we should work on. I don't see a problem with that. If we're willing to make the time to sit with them, listen to what they're talking about.
I guess I don't understand, Andy, when it's a public meeting and we're demonstrating interest in their work. Like, those are public
I'm
meetings.
not saying there's anything illegal about our being there, it's just would it be welcome, and is formalizing a structure like this necessarily going to, you know, lead to improved relationships? We, you know, fact is, we have a lot of good relationships just because, you know, we have kids, we live in this town, we know people, right? And so do we want to make that a more formal, rigid structure than what we have?
I'm not sure I would describe it as formal or rigid. Like, saying like, hey, so-and-so, I, you know, just to let you know if there's anything you need, I'm like, you're sort of trying to improve our communication, and this is one way we're trying. I don't know, I think it's worth trying and seeing how it goes. We didn't give it a proper try last year. Can we give it a real
We should
try?
offer it
And
too.
so basically, we define the liaison role that you reach out to the principal, PTO, sort of parent leaders at the school, and just build whatever relationships with that they want to build with you.
Yeah, and sometimes they reach out, they say, oh, we have the play coming next week. Can you go? And you say, sorry, I'm at work that day, but let me reach out to other school committee members and see who can go. Like, and that way we can put out a call for stuff, which is what has happened other
So
times.
should we do that just the way we have enough the liaison on the website right now? Like we just add some more liaisons, one for each school, and then, you know, just.
Well, we talked about having out of district and special programs as well.
Special programs like.
Metco steps, I think that's what
I'm the steps.
Yeah,
I go to
Metco.
the board meetings every.
well, we wrote down special programs and I thought it was Metco and steps and maybe some other programs, but I could be wrong.
I'm not sure what that is,
Well,
but,
at minimum, we could say Metco.
well, that's me, I'm the Metco lead.
But, okay, then forget it. So just K through 8, 9, 12, and out of district.
Okay.
Do
And
the
then,
district parents meet?
I think there's an out of district parent advisory committee, isn't there?
there's not as far as I know, not a separate, I mean, occasionally, very occasionally, there are events where out of district parents can get together, but
Okay.
I don't believe it's a formalized structure.
Got it. Well, then maybe it would be tricky to do out of district, even though we would like to be able to reach them. There's not necessarily the convening, the mechanism for you to do that.
Okay, and as for the attendance at events, I mean, would this work out, this idea of having a kind of like
Shared
a
calendar.
shared calendar, and then people just, that makes everybody aware of what is out there, and people sign up as they can?
I just want to say that last year Betsy asked for people to sign up for their sandwiches for the summer workshop, and I think I was the only person who signed up for my sandwich. Last summer. I remember that because Betsy was like, I ordered up what everyone always orders because you're the only one who put in the order. And all I want to say is, my point is, the calendar is no good if Betsy puts it together and nobody fills it
Also,
in.
our email response calendar, I got the sense that some people actually consulted and realize when it's their week, and
Yeah.
not everybody does.
Oh, there's something must have done.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carol.
So it sounds like, although there was a short discussion about whether this should even be on the goals, the community engagement is staying on the goals, it sounds like. Okay, even if it's not, I would love to talk about, and I don't know if it's a goal or I don't know where it fits in. But I would love to see the school committee do more, real sort of robust, community outreach to parents, and caregivers, in the form of like just open forums, Q&A,
Office hours?
I know that you tried office hours and that didn't take hold, whether it's theme-based, whether it's grade-based, whether it's school-based,
We could, I mean, we've done it in the past, I don't think we've done it recently, is meet at the different schools instead of meeting here.
I mean, hold the school committee meeting as opposed to attending a PTO meeting.
I don't think
That's-
it's time for the mechanism right now, but I think if we could adopt it as a goal on that.
I also remember that last spring, I think we reached out to PTOs
Mhm.
asking to, you know, if they'd like any of us to attend their coffees, and, you know, some of them had us there and some did.
Yeah.
And so it's-
Usually when there's an issue,
We went to
to
a lot.
us, but there's no issue there.
We went to several, but we did not go to all, and we made multiple attempts to participate in, and to say, we want to come to your events, let us know.
and I think, I don't know how much participation the different PTO coffees get. I don't get the sense there's high turnout. And maybe this committee would try it and nothing would happen, but you did it during COVID, which was obviously a really heated time and there was tons of concern, but people came for the Zooms. And I thought it was productive. I'm sure it was stressful for you and David, but I felt like you guys really listened and got to hear what parents were experiencing on the day-to-day. That was a special circumstance. But I appreciated that, just that opportunity to engage with you as chair and at that time. It could be Zoom, like I think you get people come on Zoom, so. I mean, I'm just sort of throwing it out there loosely.
Well, we could reach out to, what we did last year, reach out to every TPO and anyone who responds, you know, we'll come and do one of these sessions.
And it's not just PTOs, it's CPAC, it's METCO-PAC, there's a whole bunch of different groups who come to that. There's school site councils, so it's just not PTOs at that meeting.
Okay.
When,
No,
sorry, when
so-
you say that, what's that meeting?
It's the, what's that
Oh, the
called?
leadership.
Yeah, the
parent
leadership, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So last year, I think it was sort of the communication subgroup that did this, like did both the
Mhm.
outreach and the actually going to these meetings. So the one question is, do we want to spread that work around, or is that something that continues to get delegated to the communications group?
Or that's part of the communications norm
Right,
conversation,
so
right?
maybe we can pick that up again later. But
Weren't there visits to every school? or
Yeah,
was
there
that
were
year
fall and
before?
spring, we did visit.
Yeah, I didn't get to do any of those, but then.
Yeah, those were good. And that's Jesse, when you talked about that, so they'll be in the fall, you get to go visit every school, in the spring, you get to go visit every school, or.
Are we doing that again?
I presume, I mean,
I'll
yeah.
set those up, yeah. There'll be
Yeah.
options, you know, you might not be able to available, but you'll be able to pick when schools have made themselves available, and if that works for you, you'll pick.
Sort of
We don't
goes
have
along with
a whole-
school committee, that's.
Yeah.
Or
It is
big
nice to be in the
efforts.
building.
And
Yeah,
those
they can only
sound,
be 4 members.
those are great, and what I'm thinking about is just, where parents get to say, here's what's on my mind, here's my experience.
Probably Zoom would be a good way to do
Yeah.
it. In my experience, still I've gone to like a PTO meeting, like you said,
Yeah,
it's really iffy if there's, I mean,
I think Zoom is so
Attendance.
convenient and we have the technology, so.
but PTO is going to run it over Zoom,
Mhm.
and we would guess, answer questions. or something. Maybe that drunk her.
Okay,
Okay, so for events, I mean, why not, let's give this calendar idea a try and see how it works out, if Betsy's willing.
Yeah,
to-
so I'm envisioning a shared Google Calendar where
Yeah.
I'll input all the events, and then in the descriptions, we all just start putting notes in, to each other about.
Calendar or just talk? Is
Oh,
it talk
calendar would be
easier?
I think a calendar, because that'll be
Yeah.
live,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I think calendar's better, because I can't figure out how to get.
right?
Then it would like interfere with our schedules all the time, so we have to see it.
Well, not all of us, yeah, but,
Yeah, okay.
I have an idea, that this way would be separate.
Okay,
I
so
just forwarded it to myself and then I
Yes.
added my.
I think we have a good consensus on what we're doing. Do we think this needs to be a goal? Or just something that we do?
I would like to make it a goal, even though we did it
We'll
last
need to slightly rewrite the one from last year, but
Yeah,
do that offline, let's say. Is it okay to do that offline? It's and circulate it and make sure everybody,
Yes.
it incorporates everybody's ideas. All right, so supporting the district's strategic plan, and that is way too vague to serve as a goal, but do we want anything like that this year?
Well, if we wanted to interact with the superintendent schools, I'm assuming we would want to have that as our goal.
I just think it has to be smart. So I'm not sure how that's a smart goal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
one thing that we could think about, I'm not sure we need it, but if we want, and I think we're gonna do this thing I'm saying anyway, but basically ensuring that our budget priorities align with whatever the strategic plan is, but that's already gonna happen, so I
Yeah.
don't really think we need to. Personally, I would scratch it, because
Yeah.
it doesn't feel special, it feels sort of
Yeah.
like the core work, like, do your job, it's sort of the goal.
everybody in the district is supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
this, so
exactly.
it's us. All right, so, that's good. Next is equity focused professional development. Hopefully we got to this year.
I was really excited about this.
Yeah,
I'm still really excited about it. But I still go to this idea that someone needs to actually be in charge of
Right.
like finding the facilitator or the book, whatever.
Some of this work wanted to get at with the case studies that I proposed. And so
Yeah.
we're going to try to do that again, and we invite, everybody to attend, even though it's just the subcommittee, that,
yeah,
I thought that was a terrific idea.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's exciting.
I'm sorry that the first attempt to schedule that didn't work, but
Yeah.
I hope that it will. Yeah.
Do you see this as a function, a potential function of the DEIJ subcommittee?
it could be, I think that it depends on whether people, so if, I guess I have to go a little bit larger. This is equity focused and and the DIJ subcommittee is labeled as such, right? So, DIJ subcommittee could obviously hear from the Office of Educational Equity. We also could hear from the Office of Teaching and Learning and Office of Student Services, right? All of those things fall under DIJ, right? So if you want to keep the subcommittee as a time to hear from those different offices about what they're doing for equity and get, that information, it's kind of different than the way that this is worded, where it would be more like a self-study. I love the self-study idea, but I just wanted to say that so that everybody knows what we would be doing if we try to put this under.
When we did this with
Yeah,
Janae, we did this as a workshop, just for the school committee.
Mhm.
So if this was with DEIJ subcommittee, I guess it could be a DEIJ workshop.
I like it. And also I know that, I don't know if it's happening this year, but in prior years, there's been books that like all the administrators are reading
Right.
or all the teachers are reading, and I'd love to share in that experience if it
Yes.
was relevant to us, and assuming it is, which just because they're reading it, I presume it's relevant to us. So how can we also
Mhm, mhm.
be getting the same education that our educators are getting? That's
Yeah.
really valuable, I think.
So, are we going to look to our educators to facilitate that for us, or is it something that we can run ourselves? If
I
we
guess
get the name
I
of
don't
the
know.
book or the topic.
I don't know. I guess maybe you're volunteering to write this goal in a smart format and you'll figure that out.
Maybe you and Claire
Yeah,
can
maybe.
collaborate around this goal.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to keep this as a goal, as a written goal.
I think so.
Rather than just sort of doing it.
So I understand that this is PD for us,
Yeah,
right? That's how.
exactly.
It could be the workshop night.
Yes, I think we've done that before during workshop.
We did.
And I
But you
really
need a
like
chunk of
the
time.
work Linus, the book that we read last year, the governance, what was it called? The governance. Oh yeah, the governance course, sorry. And that was a really positive experience. And so,
You know, I think
Doing that
building it around
more.
a book that we're all supposed to have read is definitely helpful.
yeah,
Say that again.
Building a conversation around a book that we're all supposed to have read is definitely. Okay, so maybe Sarah can turn this into a SMART goal and run with it. Then the last one from last year was to review and update the policy manual versus to do 2 entire sections in a systematic way. So finance, I know it's moved along a little bit, but that, we may not be able to get that done right away. And I know, Stephen, you have a vision for the
Definitely a
policy.
goal.
subcommittee,
Yeah, that's our goal, right?
But is it a goal to actually sort of do a whole section, or is it to sort of identify?
It's a goal
what
to
needs
do
be-
sections of the policy manual, but I don't know why that would be a school committee goal
Yeah,
anymore.
so I was gonna suggest that we do this, but not as a school committee goal,
Yeah.
it's something for the policy subcommittee.
I think we were advised by our MASC
Yes.
advisor to make that a goal of the
Okay.
policy subcommittee, so we'll take that.
Okay, good, so we can strike this from the school committee goals, but,
And I don't think we were looking even at like something like 2 entire sections. We wanted to just look at the important ones first and begin.
Yeah,
You're gonna be, and to determine the important ones, is that based on what the school department needs, or based on what you think, or how do you?
probably.
I'm not a policy, so I'm just curious.
okay, so we're gonna carry forward, 2 of the 4 goals from last year, so if that makes space for 2 more, then I do have a couple of proposed ones, if people are willing to look at those.
It was great, Andy, the first one.
I mean, that's something we talked about at the last workshop, and I think I actually volunteered to write a governance handbook, which I haven't done, but this would be we will set a deadline, we'll make sure that the whole committee is part of the process.
What, the only question I have on it is, what's the strategic goal? How does it differ from
All I did here was copy sort of what the book said, and I'm not sure we would necessarily follow all of these. I mean, we definitely want the first part, like the sonorous preamble. The second part is like Article 1 through 3 of the US Constitution, we can do that. Description of the governance culture, maybe, but I think that's maybe the roles and norms, and maybe communication norms as well. And then protocols adopted by the committee, maybe, we'll see, and strategic goals adopted by the committee, I'm not sure about that part.
Although we did have
I think
those
that's done.
goals, we have
Yeah.
district goals that we
Yeah.
adopted,
District goals, yeah,
so-
but whether that's part of a governance handbook, the
Yeah.
governance handbook is supposed to help us run ourselves,
Got it,
so.
got it.
So, thank you. So you're sort of answering, because again, I wasn't here for that, whatever work preceded this. So a governance handbook. Yeah, what and why?
It's like it's a document that is public, but it's mainly for internal use. One of its main purposes is actually to orient incoming members.
yes,
So sorry, that wasn't ready for in time for you and Jesse. But it's just like I would imagine it as a very short document, like 5 pages at the most.
Yeah,
And it would just kind of outline sort of just our basic norms, like our basic procedures, like, what's our
It's like what town meeting has for
what's our
their
goals,
members.
yeah.
In short. Pages.
And it's just a short thing to refer to keep us focused on our mission and how we do things.
and it would be designed by, I mean, town meeting is guided by statute. So this is something that would be.
Well, school committees,
Yeah. but our-
Right, so it sounds like this is
the
outside of the
statutes are very
statutory,
minimal,
yeah,
right? I mean,
right.
we have 4 statutory responsibilities, but there's a lot more
So
that
this
we all
would,
need to know.
and so what does moral imperative mean?
Yeah, that I didn't get.
Yeah, again, I listed
That was
this.
from the book.
Oh,
that's the part
okay.
about like, it's sort of like related to our norms about that we're focused on student need and that sort of thing, like the moral imperative. And I think even that book had really nice paragraphs about moral
But think of
imperative.
this as like the preamble to the Constitution, right? Like what it's for, why we're doing this at all.
by that, I think it means that we
Oh.
have different opinions, but we act together, that kind of stuff.
So I would propose that we commit to actually writing one of these and approving it by the end of this calendar year.
I wanna say that do you want the due date for that to be a complete one? Because there's no process here where you have a draft and then Like, does it not make sense to maybe have a draft ready for December 31st and then a final version by March 31st or something?
So it sounds like you're thinking that I would be doing this, which that's probably.
Well, you agreed to do it, you committed to doing it, so.
Thinking that, yeah.
We're thinking it because you even just reiterated that you had committed to
If you want-
doing
if
it.
you wanna give me more time, that's great, but I just thought, let's set.
Well, I
a
do
date.
think it would be helpful that there's a little bit of a feedback process
Fine.
in there too, as long as you're thinking you're gonna
Yeah,
have it.
my notion was that like, I would get things done quickly enough so that everyone could do feedback and we could iterate before December 31st.
Okay.
That's great.
Someone have a copy of the book they'll loan me too.
Yeah.
You guys-
I
accept that
more
book?
copies of it at the governance.
The governance board?
Do you have more of those, Linus?
I was looking.
Yeah,
It's really good, Jesse.
yeah, it'd be worth reading before.
Yeah.
Draft comes out.
Yeah.
For Carolyn too.
Yes, this is, that's what I'm
Do
gonna
you have one, sir?
Oh, it doesn't have to be this month.
Did you?
Well,
You didn't
I have mine.
You have.
Can I request, Andy, that under protocols, there's some discussion of the protocols for running school committee meetings?
Yeah. That's partly under rules and norms, but I get it, yeah.
Okay.
Like, there's Robert's rules, but we don't actually apply them.
Well, we do.
We do.
Robert's rule?
We should be. What
Well,
part of Robert's
yeah.
rules aren't we following?
it's true, I try to follow them.
Yeah.
But, historically, I mean, we align a few things, but mainly we follow them.
Yeah.
Just for
Like
my
we
part,
aligned them
I
for
would
lack of
appreciate some
familiarity.
clarification around how we run public comment. I think it would be good to have.
That's, I
That's
looked
already
all
written.
through Robert's rules about that, there's nothing
Policy.
about that.
But it's
They
in the
don't-
policy
they don't cover
document.
that. But yeah, we should sort out how we do public comment.
Great. I would just like to have, however we decide, I would like for it to be applied consistently.
Yeah.
And also communicated publicly.
It is
It
communicated
is
publicly.
in the
It's in
policy. It's on the agenda.
Yeah, it's on the agenda, it's in policy.
Well, Betsy sends an email saying when they register, sign up. But the,
Yeah.
And
It's
I'm
very
saying it's in policy, because if you want,
I know.
yeah, okay.
So in terms of like governance culture and protocol, so I'm thinking that subsumes school committee rules and norms, communications norms, and I guess public comment, how we do that, just how we run our meetings is what others.
And we're still gonna discuss that in a second.
communications, right?
Yes. Okay, so that's settled. And then the second proposed goal, give me a second to write something down, and I'll explain why I'm proposing that. Yeah, so I think that it's important for us to have some kind of framework for thinking about hidden bias incidents. When we tried in the spring to do it through policy, I think there were just a lot of things that came up, right, that make it hard to do through policy. It wasn't clear, we have a bunch of policies, and if you're an incident, it's not clear whether the policy already applies, and also writing a policy means kind of answering a lot of questions that we may not be in a position to answer. And so I was wondering whether we might consider doing something else, which is to, write a sort of more framework document that's meant to help us understand whether we actually need to update any policies or procedures. And the three things that I think we would want to address in a document like this, and again, it would be short, would be just to outline the norms of conduct that we want to see in our schools. And that would, cause everybody to feel welcome and supported. To outline the steps that the district is taking to uphold these norms, and make sure that we're not creating an intimidating or hostile environment. And here I'm sort of following the AGO's guidance that sort of districts are need to sort of proactively take steps to uphold this kind of environment and not just wait for stuff to happen and then try to respond. But in terms of the response, like I think it is also important that families and the community kind of have some idea of what to expect when an incident occurs. And we should have some kind of framework for guiding the response. And I think in writing something like this, we want to be working with MASC to see what other districts have in place or contemplating, and also working with the Attorney General. So that's my idea. Had at it.
So how would this be different? Mean that our policy, the PSB policy includes I believe. Student conduct or sort of code of conduct. I don't know if it has like expectations, but then I think the policy is pretty clear with like, yeah, conduct and responses to conduct in policy, protocols. So how, and just thinking about the MASC less is more, how would this be different from what already exists in the public schools of Brookline?
And before I try to answer, do other members have sort of ideas, or just any responses about, along these lines of whether something like this is necessary or helpful?
And sorry, I will throw out a sort of second related question that has to be asked, which is if we put something that's not policy in writing, what kind of liability exposure do we have? I think that's important to think about. We have a policy.
I think it's a good idea. Because I don't think it's necessarily additive. I think a framework can integrate all the existing policy and also provide a framework for where we need to revise policy specifically. So there's bullying, discrimination, and hate, right? Those are the elements of what would be in the framework. And then on the side, there's the reporting element. So these are all in different places right now. So framework can provide one place that can describe all of the elements of PFB handles the issues of all of the bad behaviors that occur in schools, describe how it's handled and what the reporting pieces of it are. You can also provide guidance on how communication occurs, and then it could also provide guidance on how, by communication I mean, could provide the one-stop shop to messaging information that could be on posters, whatever it is. But it could, I think that extra level of communication that bundles all of this information on these behaviors would be really useful. It's not about adding policy language that could expose us to liability, but better communicating around what policies exist and then figuring out what gaps exist in our policy and remedying that. That's what I think is the next action.
So who's the audience?
I think everybody.
Community, yeah.
It's partly us, it's partly staff, partly the community. It's meant to be a completely public document, right? Yeah, you're right.
On the first bullet, it feels really big, and I don't see how that bullet necessarily fits that concise document. Like, making all students and staff feel welcome and supported, to me, goes beyond just preventing and addressing hate and bias.
Yeah, maybe it's too broad. I mean, I'm kind of building on what the AGO is saying about our responsibility to maintain an environment that's free from intimidation and hostility.
Yeah,
Right? And we could limit it to that and just, and talk about the proactive steps that the district takes to uphold that, but.
because just like the norms of, to achieve that, I would think that we're talking about a whole bunch of things that goes beyond specific incidents, but go to larger sort of issues of ongoing school culture.
Yeah.
And so those are slightly different takes.
Right, and
Then
maybe
that's
you are dressed up, but I take your point that maybe it's beyond it's maybe.
Well, just beyond this
ability
scope right
now.
here, yeah.
Linus, what are you doing now in terms of this? This is the staff?
So what we were looking to do was come up with a response protocol to this. So we have a couple of versions of the draft that we were looking at. And interestingly enough, another superintendent put out on our forum today asking if districts have a mechanism for actually doing something similar to this, because again, it's the conversation we just, I think, we're articulating. You have the bullying form, you have the harassment form. I think when Ryan and I had this conversation, we were looking for something. So it's just all of these different places. So we're going back internally saying, does it make sense to have sort of one-stop shopping for these various reports? And then the other question that was asked, and again, is one that we see internally. If it's bullying, it goes to this office. If it's harassment, it goes to this.
Right.
If it's staff harassment, it's a
Yeah.
different office.
Yeah,
So it's well intended, but it's still disparate in terms of where things may go depending
Yeah.
on who's impacted as such. So
and
you're
even with all of
unique,
that, it seems like there's some incidents that don't get caught, that don't get reported within the current framework. Right?
are there things that, you know, some may say, some may say it's race-based, but they may use bullying language or report it in the bullying fashion, or if it was one incident, does it rise to the level of bullying, but the person is saying that they're being bullied?
Right.
So it's, you know, here's the legal definition, here's the impact that's an individual experiences. And so it's not simple. But again, if we try to draw these very rigid lines, it's still going to compartmentalize things too, so.
So I guess part of the motivation here is to be able to talk about these things so that doesn't immediately get us caught up in that kind of problem, right? Well, was this bullying? Was it discrimination? Was it harassment? Was it race-based?
Is this kind of document best drafted by school committee or is this drafted by staff? Because this to me feels a little bit like an operational document. And so I just wonder if it's really a school committee responsibility or if it's a staff
And
responsibility.
why would we duplicate? We would want to see what you're putting.
No, I'm
together.
saying we wouldn't do it, right?
Yeah,
It's really
that-
on
yeah,
their
I'm
side.
agree-
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, we wouldn't
agreeing with
duplicate,
you.
right?
I think we should see what, you know, Linus and the staff have come up with and maybe give some input, but.
I really liked in this conversation that you talked about school culture, because that's our other sort of desire, right?
Mhm.
And I think that we all want to try to figure out what it is that we could do to help that. And so I think that if we separate out what sounds like it might be kind of like the protocol and the response, that definitely seems to me to be with the schools, right? But is there something that as a school committee, we want to be involved in school culture with, you know, promoting that? Is there something, is there a separate piece?
I mean, what we do for school culture is provide budgeting, budget lines for, like Matt, to go out to do his work. I mean, that's what the school committee does. We don't, we don't say, do this program, do that program, or you have to spend 15 minutes a day, you know, working on social emotional challenges, issues, learning. But we do support the people who are doing work.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
What I like about the three that I think we agree on right now is they're about our practice. They're very clearly about our practice and they're not to do with the operations of the schools.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Because if something is an operation of the school thing and it's important, it should be in the strategic plan for the next 3 years. So like adding on something else, if it's not in the strategic plan, I'm just saying we should, and school culture is in there, but as you say, it's through channels that exist in the staff.
But what if our budgeting, you know, like when we were talking about the superintendent's evaluation, I was noticing how we were saying like we have an up and running Office of Educational Equity, we have 2 people there. We actually have like 1 person there and an assistant, right? That's what we funded it for. So if we're going to really rely on these different places where we say it's just a school culture, we're going to need to make sure that the budget follows that, you know, that we definitely have.
In our budget priorities document, we specifically have it's a multi-year budget priorities, which is what we're talking about, and we have one specifically about OEE already. That basically says OEE and its concepts need to be developed, and then the school committee directs the administration to essentially fund those appropriately.
Great.
Yeah, so
That is a priority of ours.
it is already a priority of ours, and I think that when we wrote that last year, I mean, we'll probably update the language in a couple of weeks, but when we wrote it last year, it was still in very early days of Claire's tenure. I don't think Christina had started. We might say, oh, well, maybe there's more specificity in that one, but yes, the budget, the sort of budget as an articulation of desires is through that document. Yeah, and it's that part is
A
articulated.
year or two ago, we added 4 or 5 social workers.
It was more than that. It was the first year of COVID, and we added 8.
Just to say, the reason I bring that up is to say that we said.
It's been a heavy investment, that's right.
Put that in the budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we discovering that from what Linus said, that there's already work going on in the executive group to create such a document?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, like, the work that's being done by staff now, is it going to result in sort of answers to these questions? I guess I didn't pose questions, but sort of, are these issues gonna be addressed in a publicly available way as a result of what staff are working on now?
Yeah, so what we are looking at is, race or bias, protocol, so when incidents happen. As such, spell that out, communicate with the community, all those aspects, so we're in very, like I said, very early stages of our drafting of that and looking at what other systems have in place, as well, but if the committee wants to pick this up, I'm happy to. give that over.
No, I mean, if this is gonna come out of staff work anyway,
Yeah.
then I agree, I don't see any reason for us to be
Well,
bargaining.
I guess-
And I think it's the right
But it's-
place for it to be. I mean, we're not in the weeds there at the
Well,
schools, no.
the idea here was to not be in the weeds, but
Yeah.
I can see also how it'd be hard not to get sucked into the weeds if we undertook this.
Right.
I still think there's a way there. I could see this as a web page that's the district's approach to addressing hate and bias incidents comprises a set of policies, one for bullying, one for discrimination, one for harassment, linked here, here, and here. A reporting mechanism linked here, with the report here, and an operational protocol manual linked here, put together by the administration. These elements of our approach reflect and then we describe what the nature of that approach is. That could be the response to this goal. That to me seems very substantial. Putting all these pieces
Do we
together.
not have something online that you can report this?
Yeah,
No, we do,
it's
we do.
available, but it's not.
We do, we
Lean
absolutely do. I was
and-
saying, putting the policy piece, the reporting
Yeah.
piece, and the operational protocol piece together in a single place. That's directed at the community, that has messaging for the community saying, this together is our approach to how we are addressing hate and bias incidents. That to me is a substantial response, I think.
I guess my question to Linus is the following. We're a month from school. And a war could break out at any time, maybe not tonight, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, maybe in a week. And it's gonna be going on most likely, and 306 days hostages are still open. So this isn't going away, and we have 4 weeks before school starts, and the question is, none of us want to repeat the cultural ripple effects that happened between October 7th and the end of last year, when suddenly, when college students went home, the encampments closed. So we've got 4 weeks, and we need to extend or structure some kind of message to the school community, so that we're not going to change the whole culture overnight. There's nothing we can write that's going to flip a switch, but we need to set some goal for how we want interactions to be, top to bottom, at every level, so that we don't fall into the same situation we had last year, which now we know about. We experienced, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, 9 months of it. And it's not going away. It's still here right now. I have a sister and a sister-in-law and nephews on the border in Lebanon right now. So, and they're waiting for missiles to fall. So, and they're falling. So there's gonna be discussions about this first day of school. There are gonna be perhaps faculty making comments. There's staff talking about it, and we need something out there to be ahead of it. We know what's gonna happen. We can't say, oh, we didn't have enough time. Something might happen, and there's gonna be, pain and suffering could end up in the school at day one. And so what are we planning to do about it? I think this idea, and I'm only seeing it right now, but this is like a step in that direction to somehow organize ourselves. That's what, you know, if the district's doing it, we'd want to see it tomorrow or the end of the week or what is tomorrow, I guess next week or something, because then we're just like 2 weeks till the end of, you know, till school starts again. I mean, I met with Liza and Matt last week. We talked about some things related to this. And they said, well, they want to make sure, there's one takeaway, there are many takeaways. One was that they want to make sure that there are support systems in place for students, be they Muslim students, Israeli students, American Jewish students, like in case something happens. And so sure, that's important, but we want to try to not to have incidents happen. That's before we worry about how we're going to react to them. It's an in our face threat right now, existentially. It's not just like, you know, a race issue. This is the world, Qatar said it, you know, the world would be a better place without an Israel in it. And so no one's saying that in any other country in the world right now, but country after country is lining up to say, we cannot have Israel in, you know, in the world. So this is a different kind of threat, and the words that the district uses and the tone that the district sets is going to have a lot to do with, you know, what suffering we may have, you know, day one. So, I mean, this is if we can pull this together quickly enough, because we know, I mean, we met with the policy subcommittee when we met, we realized we can't have a policy in place by September. Even if we did, getting everybody educated and developed and rally around it would be very difficult. So whatever we can promote from you know, working together with the district, we don't want to work separately, to have an approach out there would be very valuable. You know, and I think the parent meeting, I mean, I wasn't able to attend because I was a high school parent, but the parent meeting of the 150 parents or something at Tappan Street that occurred was like when things were at the boiling point. And, you know, the list of items that students wrote about, but they wouldn't put in the system. So there came out an apparent list that you have. And some of the staff things that they wouldn't put in a system because they were afraid of retribution or other issues. You know, Marcy Miller's blog post, you know, sort of explained a lot of like what she went through. I sent that out to everyone. These are, you know, all those folks are going to look at beginning of the new year and saying like, what are we positioned? Are we ready? And I think this is our moment to be ready, to think, to talk about and think about what we're going to do to be ready. So it's great to
what about having that product instead of, as you've listed it here, in what about that product be a web page that just gathers all of the district's assets around just our policy, reporting, and protocol assets on one web page? With some of it, it could be TBD if it's not completed yet, with some preamble that describes the district's approach towards hate and violence incidents.
I think that's reactive after it's happened. And I think what Jesse's saying is something more proactive. Doesn't have to be a lot, but enough for people to feel comfortable that their concerns will be addressed.
But I guess, is that, in your mind, is that a policy document? Is that?
No,
is that
it's,
a
in my
statement?
mind, it's, Linus in this opening remarks. You know, depending on where things are that day, you know, at that time, saying something to staff. You know, these are things we're gonna be probably encountering this year. You know, we will be supporting everybody, or as we have in the past. I don't know, you know.
I hear
can't
you.
say.
I do. I'm just thinking about number 2 is the school committee goal. And I'm thinking, what can the school committee do
Yeah.
around an approach to hate and bias incidents? And I like the approach of trying to integrate what exists into one community facing and accessible web page with an introductory component that states the intentions of our approach. And I guess I see Dr. Guillory's remarks as something separate from what we would put together. Although I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying.
Yeah,
If the resources are out there, I'm happy to work on putting together some page. I'll write the page if you want to do. That's not the issue.
Is this approach something that?
Well, I think the point is people are savvy out there, so we just can't throw together the links. It has to be something meaningful that will grab people's attention And when they finish getting to the bottom of the page, they don't have to smile, but they have to think, oh, they heard us. You know,
You've just encapsulated it. When you sent Marcy Miller's blog post to us, I feel so badly that I didn't respond, right? And the thing is that I'm afraid that whatever I would propose wouldn't feel like enough, And so I think that that's maybe what Stephen's asking you is, we acknowledge that whatever we would do would probably not feel like enough. So we have to figure out what it is that we can do to make especially the educators, feel like they're supported.
Right. Maybe that page that Stephen was talking about needs to be focused on educators. Maybe we can't solve the problem of 7,000 sets of parents, but we could help with our educators, a smaller group, and they have different stake, in the system. Maybe we need to tell them, in very short terms, we love you and we're going to support you. And how are we going to do that?
Yeah, like how you would expect the district to respond.
To you as staff,
Yeah.
for example. I mean, we can't,
And to families as well.
yeah, I'm just saying there are different stakeholders, and I think people would understand if that if we found a method that really worked to help manage staff, and we couldn't get the families as soon, at least these, staff, that's an important component.
I would like to practice.
But we just not do if we don't do anything, that's, we can't let that happen.
Yeah, I mean, this has moved beyond this being a school committee goal, but clearly this is not ready to become a school committee goal, but it's fine to discuss what we can
Just for
do.
my own knowledge, do we still have those safe spaces at the high school for kids to go to? Yeah, the affinity spaces.
I'll check with Anthony, but for some reason I thought those were teased out at the end of the year, but I'll ask you.
I thought they got added back in. They
Yeah,
They
added.
did,
Yeah.
at the end, they were back in. The last
Because that
message
would
I
be
thought
something
was.
that parents would want to know,
Mhm.
we still continue to have,
Right.
Yeah.
students, can feel comfortable going.
Well, they needed a staff person, and I think that was one of the reasons that they pulled back after a while. Right towards the end of the year, after a lot of protests there, I think they were brought back.
I think I
Sort
heard
of
Jesse
ways.
just offer to write something, it might not be a goal. But can we say yes to the offer?
Well, so
Is
can I
it-
make one other suggestion as a possibility, because I think it has to be more visible. Writing it, people might go to the website, how many people do you know go to our websites?
I agree.
But if Linus includes that in his opening remarks, teachers, if on our first meeting,
And the first newsletter.
Yeah.
but in the first newsletter, and then, at our first meeting, I don't know whether it's you, Andy, or someone else on the committee, talks about, this may be a very difficult year. These are the things that we have set in place. There may be other things that we will try. Know that we value every student who comes to Brookline, and we certainly won't allow anybody to be discriminated against, et cetera, whatever. Some sort of thoughtful
So
opening remarks.
the goal now we're discussing is about messaging, whereas you wrote something about content. It sounds
Right,
like
so-
the content.
And
goal
you've
is
been
being-
talking about something that pulls together stuff that
Yeah.
exists, but there's also stuff that doesn't yet exist.
Right,
that
so it
needs
sounds like
to
we're
be worked out.
agreed that we're gonna outsource content to the administration, which is already working on it. I was just talking about putting content in one place, and I feel like Jesse is saying work needs to be done in both areas. But like your first call, I think, was loud for messaging, that there needs to be messages heard, but you're also saying that it needs to be. Actually, I'm not totally sure what your stance is on content, but I feel like you've been a strong voice for proactive messaging on the school committee since you arrived at the school committee. And I've heard that.
Mhm.
I'm only saying this because I feel like your initial draft was about a goal around content creation, and now it sounds like the school committee is talking about a goal around messaging.
Yeah, partly because we don't, but not all the content is in place, right? That's in process.
Sorry, I didn't mean to sigh. That was louder than I.
You're allowed to sign.
Yeah.
And sorry, just to, Dr. Guillory, can you elaborate on what it is
that you're working on or staff is working on?
So what we are looking at is a bias, what we're calling a response to bias or harm incident. So in the case, the situation that's presently in the media, how would something of that nature, how would uh, um, an event against a group then that impacts a wide uh, birth of our community get reported out. This is what we're doing. This is making folks aware. So it's more of a protocol. It doesn't hit all the elements that you have here, but that's a small portion of what's being articulated here. So it's more,
Right.
so it's encapsulating any form of hate or bias.
Well, it's discrimination, but not bullying and not harassment.
Right.
So. Are you saying, so first of all, I struggle with kind of like, what is bias? What is hate? Do we know it when we see it? Is that and I'm not asking you to answer that, I'm just saying, like, that kind of jumps out for me as just from a policy, like, I think it gets tricky. I think it's a slippery slope, maybe that's just me. And when you're talking about children, or you're talking about adult, but okay, if you guys want to go there, good luck. And are you saying that the feeling is that when something happens in the Hayes school, that there's some kind of public announcement about incidents that happen between students?
No.
Okay.
So, and that's what, what you're saying is spot on in terms of the level of complexity, because there are always staff conflicts, there are always student conflicts of some sort, but what are those that sort of cross a threshold? And it's sort of this adage of you know it when you see it type thing, and that's not overly helpful when one says, well, why this and why not that type of thing as well. But I think over time, trying it out, and so that's what we are putting forward right now. It's just when there's an incident that rises above, two kids have an altercation, that's not one that requires a response on this protocol. Someone using derogatory or inflammatory language that's targeted against a group of people or individuals, something that's very broad and big as such. And so that's what we're thinking about right now.
And part of it would be tools for the principal to help the principal out. It would be,
Communications.
it would be like, some information for communications and for what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
How to support them in that regard. It's not superintendent reporting this out, but it's how then to support that school community. Is it isolated to a grade level? Is it isolated to a classroom? But sort of this consistent pattern that the community can expect, that when said things happen, and schools do it all the time with various incidents that occur.
And I think you said race when you were introducing this before, but you're looking at not just.
The words that I should have used were bias and hate were the words that should have been used.
Okay, so I guess, it's hard to pull together this discussion and summarize it. I mean, so it seems that like the core of this proposed school committee goal is already being worked on by staff, and I think, we should just support that work. The question is what, if any, role the school committee has, and Jesse is saying that, that we can certainly say something at the beginning of the year. I think we can just do that as a school committee,
can we be plugged into what staff's doing? So, you know, part of the challenge will be if staff works on this, let's say till the end of the month, and then we get to take a look at it, let's say, and then it's the beginning of the year already, and then we look at it and we say, well, we might have taken a slightly different approach, and then the staff says, well, we put all this effort in, you know, we got this thing finished, it's all ready, and now you guys need to look at it, and then sort of it can get complicated, so it would be helpful, I guess. I mean, we don't want to take it over, but can we be partners? Is it important for us to be partners on this, which is such a sensitive topic?
You mean the protocol itself?
Well, we don't want to oversee it, but just to be plugged into what's developed,
I
or
mean,
there's
yeah,
a
that,
document that's in preparation to share it with school committee, so people that are interested in looking at it can see it. It's not to be shared outside, not to go to Brookline News, but just to look at it internally as partners, collaborators.
I'll say, I would feel that I would feel like it's overstepping to do anything more than be apprised of its progress and to know what the content is as it's developing, but I do support the idea of a school committee message at the beginning of the school year to set a tone. I think that's a lovely idea, especially as it was a pretty tense year in public comment last year compared to the other couple of years I was on the school committee. Helen, I don't know how it ranks for you.
It depends.
One thing I've done, Jesse, before, which might
It was.
scratch this itch that you were having, is offer to be a reviewer. You're offering, right? It's not that the school committee is asking, it's you're offering as an individual, it's something that you have personal interest and expertise in, and then you have the opportunity to be a beta tester, so to speak, of the message.
Sure, that's.
Yeah,
We have 12 minutes left. I think what's left on the agenda, there were the communication and engagement norms. I think that sounds like it'll be folded into the children's handbook, so that's.
yeah, this is also like a version 1 of what's a document that's up to version 4. at this
Yeah,
point.
so there's definitely a newer version that I think is due to Stephen, that was not distributed.
Yeah.
But, so maybe we can.
Stephen's one with version 4, we had discussed a version 2 after this one and a version 3, so
So
this
and
one's
if
very
you could
empty.
share with me the latest version.
You can see it on the email spreadsheet. It's linked
Okay.
on the what's
The
it called?
response calendar.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, on the response calendar.
The
Okay,
response
right.
calendar.
So that leaves three items.
Never find.
That leaves 3 items.
Well, but isn't it in the response calendar in Betsy's school committee folder? I'm pretty sure yes.
Yeah, I put it.
You don't have to find it, it's in her folder.
I just bookmarked it once and for all.
I put Steven's draft, a link to Steven's draft.
Should probably
Yeah.
be set.
Yeah. Okay, so that leaves 3 things that we need to discuss. One is setting up the communications team for the coming year. Another is our participation of Brookline Day in September. And finally, a discussion of switching to Zoom meeting rather than Zoom webinar for our subcommittee meetings. So for the communications team, so far it's been Mariah, Stephen, and Val. I guess
There was
people
someone
have been-
else before too, before Nancy, that's right.
Yeah, so like, you know, is it working? Is it too much work? Like, what should its role be if we should be on it?
I really like the bi-monthly parent leader part of it. That seems very valuable. I will say that it feels a little bit unstructured on that, and like if I don't send out the email or remind other people to send out the email, and I don't think anyone else has, to the parent group to ask for agenda items, like no one does. So that part feels like, I just feel like it could be a little tighter. Yeah, it's not, it happens, but it's like it feels a little.
Is the problem on our end, or did you feel it?
Our end.
Already?
Yeah, it's like, I'm sending out the email, no one else is sending it. The problem is, I feel like I'm having to do that part by myself,
Okay.
which wouldn't be a universal problem if I felt like we all had jobs that we were doing by ourselves, but I don't feel like we all have jobs we're doing by ourselves.
And in terms of the communications part, like, I guess when we get media inquiries, they usually go to the chair.
Yeah.
And I kind of talk to the journalists if we have to.
Yeah.
Are you having to do anything?
No.
In terms of writing stuff or talking
No,
to the media?
no.
Yeah, Brookline News calls me sometimes.
Yeah, but like we're not organizing
Right.
things as a group.
Yeah.
You might be fielding your own stuff from Brookline News. Yeah.
Okay, so do we even need like a group for that role? Because
Well, we've talked about using the group in different ways,
Yeah.
and part of the group developed part of the group developed was to develop norms that no one has adhered to. So to the extent
Well,
we need,
everybody's defense, we never really finalized them either.
I think we basically agreed to do things, and some of them we have done. But I think, Andy, when this gets rolled into your governance docs, it'll actually help us a lot in terms of like legitimizing the sort of half committed to actions. So I
Okay,
think
so
that when we
now
go through that,
Now the issue is just more equitable division of labor amongst. the
Yeah,
group,
I think Miranda, you, Val and I have a conversation at the start of it about how we should handle the executive responsibilities of communications.
yeah, I think,
Fair.
but actually, one of the things that happened that was kind of nice in the last meeting was, and I've been doing this every time I had been sending out, every time we had a meeting, I sent out notes afterwards, or you sent out, we had notes sent out. And every time the parent leader, I sent out minutes. Yeah, you got them in your email. And just sort of
You
like.
responded to them last. Yeah.
And we also, I sort of sent, I think I CC'd you all even on the call for agenda items, so you knew it was happening as well. And as a result, the last meeting, I couldn't go and maybe Val couldn't go, but I think you went and you went, right? So it was actually kind of nice that
Yeah.
it's not the three of us all the time, that we might sort of convene,
Yeah.
but there's a different circulation of school committee
Well,
members, although
I
that
guess
doesn't.
Should we just not have the group at all? But there might be one person whose job it is to coordinate these sessions with the PTO, but that doesn't imply that it's the same group of us who always does that.
The only thing is you actually need to have it on your calendar, like unless someone's gonna, like, people need to be there. So
Right.
someone needs to commit to,
So do you
at
think,
least-
do you think it could work in this ad hoc fashion where there's somebody whose job is to coordinate and make sure that like we have the people going?
I'd
But
much
then
rather have a
if
set
you're
of people
rotating
who essentially are planning to be there. And then we have other people rotating in and out, like there can always be an extra slot of a person, because we can have 4 people there. But also, like, Val was busy, I was busy, Stephen was busy, so we all have busy work schedules, and it kind of worked kind of well because there was often times where one of 2 of us couldn't be there, and so that brings extra flexibility in.
Is the current makeup the right makeup, or is there anyone who wants to drop off? Is there anyone who wants to come on?
I'm happy to drop off or stay on.
Is there anyone who's willing to, and for this role, I think it's also important to not have a day job that requires you to be.
We all had a day job and it was fine.
Yeah, but well, how did that work?
It worked fine except for like once or twice. I think I was traveling once. I had a work conflict once. You've been traveling. I feel like Val has been, I think Val was the one, I don't want to speak for Val because or maybe she's still here, I don't know. But I think she was the one who had the hardest time joining. I think she only joined once on the time she was on.
Yeah, so is there anyone else who'd be willing to take this on?
This is something that I would love to do.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, I would.
okay, so Carolyn, Sarah, that's great, and Steven.
I'm happy to step
Sorry,
off.
I was about to say something else.
Oh, okay.
I think. I,
Sorry, you raised your hand. so-
I showed up last time and I, said something wrong like once or twice. And so I think that I don't have like all the information I need to have. And so what I would love to do is sit in for a little while and then participate.
Okay, so do you want it to be the
It's
3 of
always
us?
a good idea.
That's fine too. Unless someone else, I'm happy to step off if anyone.
I would take over the administrative responsibility, just like not talk for the first few meetings.
Okay, that could be nice.
So for now, it'd be the 4 of you. And later
That's
on,
fine.
if you feel comfortable getting on and then you can drop off.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
But I'll do the administrative.
Awesome,
Okay.
that is a hassle, so I'm glad, because it would just be like, oh my god, all of a sudden it was Friday, this thing, and it was like Wednesday, and I hadn't sent out the email yet, and I was panicking, and
Yeah, thank you, Maria, for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
it sounds small, but it was like
Yeah.
irritating executive functioning.
And also
Yeah.
The summaries.
Right, and the summary is actually, and actually having someone who was there and listening to the meeting to help write the summaries, but not necessarily like talking, it's so hard, you know what I mean, to write that'd be awesome.
All right, we've got 5 minutes left. Both items are, actually Betsy can take the lead on both of these. One is our participation in Brookline Day, and the other is
Yes.
switching over to the Zoom meeting format for some things.
So Brookline Day, I guess I just wanted to be sure that, we will participate. We do have to commit to staffing the table from 11 to 3. They don't want unattended table. So, if that's the case, I will reserve our table tomorrow.
Can we do that, and then can we do the stickers of like I Heart PSB or something like
Yeah,
that?
so there was another thing in there as well.
Yeah.
So I didn't stay, I set up and took down But in the limited time I was there, we definitely need things, like we
Yeah.
had nothing, so, there's a whole bunch of things here. I would like maybe one or two members who could work with me to make some final decisions, on if I order these nice vests, what would it look
See,
like?
I'm
you
gonna
know,
get my way.
Just,
Do we have money in the school committee budget
yeah,
for
these
this?
things are
Okay.
a couple
I'm happy to
dollars.
front it, Betsy,
No,
for
it's
whatever
not-
it
it's not-
costs, I
I
will get
wanted
this, I want a vest.
Ordering this as easy as can be. I just need help with like the graphic.
Well,
I
yeah.
order them and people don't like them. Like what color?
What
Is it just
size?
PSBs?
They're
It's-
vests, they're universal.
Universal.
Yeah, it's just like the one you see on the picture, Andy, it's not like a fancy
Those
thing.
things,
okay.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
like
penny, it's
those
a
are
penny.
nice.
Right.
Yeah, no,
Well,
like-
ugly.
You don't need to
They're
worry about
effective.
sizing. It's very nice. But then we also like, we need some giveaways, but bag with PSB, whatever.
I would
Everything
love
is
to
here.
do, I will be so entertained by doing graphics of the vest and the,
Excellent.
and the.
And last year I made this, I think, on the Saturday before, so.
It probably still applies.
Well, I feel like it was, you could
It
tell it
could
was
be a
done
little
24 hours in
more,
advance.
it could be a
basically.
little more visually colorful.
Thank you, like, maybe, and again, not to, be borrowing too much from the city charter campaign, but they just passed out business cards with
I love
the,
that.
QR code on it,
A
so.
QR code to, yeah.
Again, I can
strategic
order them,
plan
but what do we
to-
want it to say?
website,
That's
yeah.
where I need
Oh,
the help.
QR
So,
codes are-
so, Betsy wanted one or two
Our
members
website.
to
Yeah,
put
so-
her on this if we follow.
Thank
I volunteer,
Thank you.
I love this,
All
this is
right.
entertaining.
I think we're good then.
I'll help you.
And then,
Thank
so,
you.
we're all set for Brookline Day, then I'll send out a sign-up sheet for folks to sign up for hour slots or however you want, how long you want to stay. And then the transition to Zoom meeting is just following up on requests, that actually did come into the chair, but that also have been filtering down from the town. The select board has transitioned from Zoom webinar to Zoom meeting, and, they suggested that the school committee follow suit. I just talked about, how we use Zoom and my suggestions, which are for our subcommittee meetings that are fully remote, making those Zoom meeting. And what that will allow, which is what members of the community have asked for, is that attendees who are on that Zoom meeting will be able to see each other's names. There's a little bit more work at the start of the meeting with the committee members, just getting you on and giving you the permissions you need to differentiate yourself. So there'll be a little bit of a learning curve for our first few meetings, but that should iron itself out.
So can I ask
So-
one question about
yeah.
that? So the people who are attending, do they have to put in their names?
They do, but they can put in any name they want.
No, I'd like them to put in their names.
Well, they have to put in something, but there's no, like, you could type in John Smith, there's no way for me to know that's, but it really wouldn't matter, just be a name. It wouldn't, there'd be no offense to us. I mean, I could always get rid of a name that was.
No, it's not an offense,
Yeah.
I mean. They should be as visible as we are, is what I'm trying to say. If it's a meeting, we should know who's there.
Right, well, the thing is, for remote meetings for subcommittees, everyone would be on their own computer, you'd be able to see the attendees. The issue has been that the attendees can't see each other. That's been the
I
request. They would like the ability to know who else is on there,
Right.
and that's what
Makes
this
sense.
switch does. Just for, and we would also do that for school committee meetings that are also fully remote. So take like the meeting we did on July 8th, meetings that are fully remote where people can't come into the room. We would also do those on Zoom meeting, allowing members of the public to see each other in the attendee list. School committee meetings have never allowed Zoom participation. We've always had people come in person, and the remote participation has been through big, so there'll be no changes there. So, those are my
You need to set
suggestions
for public
how
comment,
to.
public comment can join the Zoom, but like
Yes.
regular attendees watch on TV or on YouTube or whatever.
We run it as a Zoom webinar.
Got it.
Access
Yep.
is only for people who have signed up for public comment.
Yep.
And we are allowed to have only an in-person meeting, right?
Yes,
I mean, I'm
I
not
mean, I
talking
think-
necessarily about the whole school committee, but like the subcommittee meeting.
absolutely, if we hold them in person, but we would still probably, as we're doing now, we would be streaming them on Zoom.
I think Helen's asking if the town, like the select board made some. Like does the town require all public meetings to have a hybrid option?
I don't think so, because the advisory committee didn't do it for their big meeting in early July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That being said, we typically do, like as we're doing now.
Yeah.
I'm asking for a reason, because the next
Lincoln.
meeting that we're having of capital subcommittee is at Lincoln School.
Oh, right.
Everybody's invited
Right.
to do a tour of what we've done there. the improvements and stuff, see the playground that needs improvement. And then have the regular meeting there, so everybody's welcome to come. But we can do the owl, it's fine, it doesn't.
The owl's terrible, but
I know.
it is what it
Even if there
is.
was a requirement, I bet that would be an exception.
Well, I will say, if you're going to have a fully in-person meeting, you have to have an in-person forum.
Right, I
You
think
know, you
do.
can't
I'll
tell the,
You're
I
gonna
put it
be
on my
there, you're gonna
calendar.
Be there, right?
Yeah.
And Sarah, right? Okay, we're
yeah,
good.
yeah, so we're all set with that one. So I think, anyway, my suggestions are, it answers the request from the community. And I think there'll be a little learning curve in some of our meetings just to get everyone set, but shouldn't be a big deal. Fingers crossed. Do you agree or? I don't know.
No objection.
No, she's.
We're good.
Right.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy.
Any new business? Being none, we're adjourned. There's no need for an executive session.
Betsy, can I just ask one question about calendaring?
Yes,
Will you be sending everyone the Google Calendar invites for the subcommittees too, once they're set?
well, my practice is only to send the Google Calendar invite to the subcommittee members for their subcommittees.
Yeah,
don't
that's what
wanna-
I meant, that's
Yes,
what I
yes,
meant,
yeah.
okay. So we will be getting Google Calendars for our subcommittees
For
sometime
the
next
subcommittees that you're
month.
on, yes, I've already
Yes.
started doing some, I held on finance, because I want to talk with you and Suzanne tonight,
Okay.
but, yes, so if you're on a subcommittee, you should be getting those Google Calendar invites for your subcommittee, and obviously for the school committee as well.
Oh, thank you.